Right, this is another episode of Summoning Insight. We are back again in 2024. And if you didn't know how we do things, we like to mix a bit of the old with a bit of the new. That's how we always do things here. So, Monty, who is the returning presence on our show that we are going to announce today?
That's right. Esports Bet is back for the year of our Lord 2024. Been a great partner for us. And thank you guys for choosing to use Esports Bet. It does really help our support. And you know, guys, I think it is, even sometimes, here's a story for you guys. Even sometimes when there's an underdog out there, sometimes on a long enough timeline, they can be the favorite. Because we'll talk about this, Thorin, but TSM, TSM,
Okay.
nobody thought that two guys on a podcast were going to be able to take on the North American Empire. And yet, through persistence and grit, somehow we achieved victory over TSM. TSM Dunc is now gone. Reggie's lies are definitely not going to mean that he takes another slot in a major region. It would be shocking for that to occur at this point. I think they're down to like 8 staff on the esports side. Their general manager pieced out.
I imagine the count probably changes day to day at this point in time. It's like, it's like a number they pull off, like number of days left to Christmas. Oh, we're down to 7 to go.
That's right. The odds are getting
sleeping over at the inside esports studio.
Let's just say that if you guys were placing your bets on esports bets, the odds would be very long right now that TSM is ever going to be coming back to League of Legends. And there's just been total radio silence as, of course, the general manager left to become the head of Razor Esports. And he was allegedly the one working on some kind of nebulous deal. Their $100 million, whatever, TSX or FTX sponsorship evaporated along with everybody else's money at the behest of Sam Bankman-Fried. So it's been a complete dumpster fire. But if you guys were smart and you put your odds, your money on us, you bet on us at the beginning, this is actually paying out mega for you right now. It's paying out mega for you. And so, as usual with Esports Bet, please use our referral code when you sign up. You still get that 50% deposit bonus up to $200. But wait, Thorin, there's more. Because even if you're not a first-time user, we have a fun new incentive for you guys, thanks to Esports Bet. Basically, as you're going to see right here, if you go over to Esports Bet, you go to the promotions tab, and you type in LFN777, you too can add this to your account. A 200% deposit bonus up to $200 USDT, or its equivalent in another cryptocurrency. And even if you already have an account, you guys can get this bonus. And of course, when you go there, you can see all the terms and conditions down below. So it really is an excellent bonus. And Thord and I are going to start off this show with a debate over LEC and who we think is going to actually do well this week. So,
and by the way, also, because Esports Bet is back, we will do Competitive Edge again. But if you've ever seen how we do that show, because we actually aren't cynical, we will even spread out the topics. Like it won't just be a repeat of what we do in this opening segment. We'll pick a different game or angle, won't we, as usual?
Yep. So Competitive Edge will be over on the Esports Bet YouTube channel, where we kind of go over the odds and take our picks and track all of our statistics as usual.
Like the joke is, if you saw during Worlds, we obviously agreed, instead of just doing like, what do we think overall is the best one, we actually picked a bunch of the sort of, pick and matchups, and then we went on either side. So the joke is, Monty got to be right picking T1 all the time, and I got to be wrong betting against Faker's Greatness. So incredibly on brand, for the show and the history of what we've done here, I think.
All right, so let's talk about this, because I think this is interesting, which is that we're going to talk about BDS versus Heretics first, because the question here is, do you believe that Heretics, who have a 2.26 odds right now, are the favorites, Thorin, actually in this matchup, when BDS is coming off of an incredibly strong best of one stage, looking really tight, especially in terms of their teamwork. And Heretics has had a lot of issues recently, such as Perks playing objectively terribly, but Wonder and Yankos playing pretty well overall. And especially in the do or die moments, is this where you predict veterans to come through?
Yeah, it's actually the format change, which is the reason why. Like, look, I do think this is actually the definition of a pick'em series. I think you can take either side of this. I think it's just do it based on whether you're feeling the odds for that particular team. The problem I have with this one is, I would have to say, I don't think the leaderboard was wrong. BDS was the most clean team in the BO1s.
Yep.
They even did actually like just actually straight up outplay a bunch of teams. There's a bunch of games they just won, and it's just like the other team was never even in it. Meanwhile, if you remember, the problem with Heretics was they started kind of well, and then in the middle week, it looked like, oh, maybe they're actually like a secret, like, top 2, top 3. But then the problem is they obviously like faltered a bit towards the end. And as you say, they had a couple of games that were just kind of like the G2 one, they weren't really in. And then they just looked a bit silly on this last week. Perks kind of had some of the nightmare games he's had every now and then the last few years. It's built him this anti-reputation. So the thing is, I do think the key thing is, though, in BO1s, I actually have noticed in LEC, there are coaches that are just really good at sort of baiting you on the BO1s or making a comp that like you might not be able to adapt to. I think that in the BO3s, I do think you start to get some of the like veteran components. The fact it's a BO3 even means the way you play the first games, you don't play with the same pressure if you're mega veterans. So I think when you look at the players on Heretics, people like Yankos, like Wonder, they can outperform their opponents potentially. I think actually this is a really interesting series. I even think actually some of the picks they've done in bot lane are interesting. I want to know, are they going to continue with that on Heretics side? Do they have more like crazy pocket picks or whatever? They're just going to go with the meta. Like even Flackett, I thought looked pretty good in some of the games. He actually had that one game he was doing really well when they got fucking lost. So I just think actually like veteran factor, once you get into a series, I think it's a bit different, It's a bit like when we watch the LCK. You never get too hyped off the game 1 upset from like the Brion or whatever. Like you have to wait till game 2's almost won before you can believe they're going to do it.
Also, playing 3 best of 1s, which is the equivalent of like the old super weeks in LCS, or even that used to exist in like EU LCS back when it was called that, are kind of fake news, because it's very different preparing for 3 different opponents in 3 days in best of 1s than targeting people, targeting a team and really testing their depth. And I think that's what scares me a bit about BDS, is that, again, they have a specific way of playing. They did manage, with that way of playing to make a split finals last year, but I don't really believe that. I mean, does anybody honestly believe that they're going to be the winter split champions? Like, can you look at them and say, like, their fundamentals are good, but when it comes to actual, like, best of 3 or best of 5 adaptation, it just feels like this is where this team could actually be picked apart and fall short. And this is what happens when you're in best of 1s and you're the weird team, because you can play your own way pretty consistently, and other teams have to generally prepare. And so if you have other considerations or you have a slightly different way of playing the game, it's often harder to beat you in a best of 1s because teams are not going to prepare specifically for you, but potentially easier to beat you in a best of 3. That said, Thorin, I'm really out on Perks' performance. I'm really out on it. I think he had some absolutely miserable games. I couldn't actually believe like how bad his Azir game was this week. That happened yesterday.
It was absolute meme, yeah.
And so I can't in any good conscience say that I don't think BDS is going to win this one, and they are pretty big favorites. So I guess, are you going to take Heretics here?
I'm going to go with the underdog.
All right.
I'm stubborn, mate. Here's the problem. What people don't realize about esports is this. I will pull against people who haven't proven it. But if you prove it, then I'll give you the props. But they haven't proven it to me yet. So I need to see it. I need to actually see that they'll win these matches now.
Okay. All right. We're going to put 200. I'm going to put 200 onto BDS. Thorin, 200 onto Heretics for the underdog.
By the way, I have one quick question. Listen, we've always broken the fourth wall of this show. Is this actually Summoning Insight? I'm actually confused right now as to what we're doing right now, mate. Like, I thought you meant we were just doing an ad at the beginning of Summoning Insight. Is this not Summoning Insight? What's going on right now? But it's simultaneously competitive edge. How does that work? I'm sure fans are wondering the same thing. What's going on? Is it just like that's the name of the segment at the beginning now that we'll put it out separately? Is that what we're doing?
No, just the beginning this week. It's not going to be at the beginning every week, guys. But we will have that. We will have the little head-to-head for you guys on a weekly basis, and we'll be.
People wondered themselves say what's going on. So fair enough.
Yeah, people. It is Something Inside. We were just using the competitive edge because it has the window there. Sorry, guys.
All right.
Sorry. Anyway, back to LEC. Speaking of other matches
Even
that
I
are
was
coming up.
confused. Like, what? Wait a minute, what show am I actually on? Like, is it even appropriate to bring up some side topic now? I don't know what's going on. Shit.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. We're integrating fancier production in for you guys. You see that?
Okay.
You see that?
Because, by the way, if we're going to get into the actual like main topics now, the obvious thing to talk about, you led with at the beginning, is I was thinking about this the other day. You know, the obvious awkward thing is we really should have actually thought about this when we did that episode of the 200th episode. Because the problem we did was we did a celebration for 200 episodes as the milestone, but then we forgot. Like, it was only about a year later. We had the 10-year anniversary, which is actually more of a traditional anniversary. So I kept thinking, like, what are you doing? Because obviously we already did the episode where you bring back the old guests. So here's what's funny, Monty. I want to run this by you. I think this would be pure banter, aka top keck. But it would also show that even though everyone else in esports is a corrupt piece of shit, conveniently, but not us, we're just paragons of virtue and true, moral men who will exist beyond these fucking, mere ages and norms and cultural trends. Even though, right, I think what we should actually do, unironically, is because it's in early February sometime when the actual 10-year anniversary is. Well, this news story about TSM, when they're down to like 9 employees and they're not in any league and not in league, I think, no joke, to declare this is how next level we are, Monty, to declare our victory over TSM at our 10-year anniversary, we should do a special episode that is actually a retrospective about TSM. And here's why, Monty, because we're not like the Mongols or something that like conquer and just wipe you out, destroy. No, we're like the Romans. We take over and then we just bring our culture in. And then, you're allowed some of yours. You're allowed to mix some of your pagan gods in there with it. But I tell you what, we are the dominant culture. So I think we just like control their narrative at the end. And then the joke is we literally 10 years, we're the ones telling the story about TSM. And I think that's how we celebrate. What do you think? And by the way, I might be able to get some guests for that. I could probably bring in fucking amazing and give him like, let him do his best man speech for TSM, and Reggie does every bloody episode. We could bring in some fun guests, guys. We could bring some fun people on, I'm sure. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great. It may have to be at a horrendous time for me because I'm in Korea, but I'm down. I will wake up very early.
We'll make it work. I just think the funny thing is, like I say, is even though part of it's a meme, by the way, it is also like we did watch 10 years of this team. Like, it wasn't an important team. So I think in a way, it'll just show that, like, one, we were petty, we did win. But then two, we also were classy and could actually, like, give people flowers where necessary.
Yeah, and the other thing about us, Thorin, is that we will just stand on the ash heap of esports, kings of the shitty ruins, whereas Reggie just intelligently leaves esports while it's on fire and then takes his website business and makes millions of dollars. So, I mean, the joke's on who, really? Like, what do we have to show for it? Winning is not good at the current time, guys. We can win esports, but nobody wants esports right now. It's completely broken.
I've also always thought as well, when I saw all these financial problems, if anyone knows that classic thing, I've repeated on some past episodes, but that thing that people used to say back in the day in 2012, because it was a Dan Din quote, the brother of Reginald, he would say, because at the time what they were trying to do was everyone knew TSM's like ad network was popping off with all the streamers. So everyone knew they were like printing money, basically. They were all making mad money. People don't know back then, CLG, like the biggest names, Hotshot, and then the TSM people used to actually be making like tens of thousands a month in fucking like 2011, guys, and 2012. They were actually making way more from actually streaming than they did from esports. And famously, Dan Din, as like a witty way to point out how rich Reggie always was, said that line. He said he could just buy 2 Lamborghinis and just crash them into each other for no reason. But it's like, well, the joke is that's a metaphor for what you did with TSM. You just kept crashing Lamborghinis into each other for no reason until at the end you had no Lamborghinis left anymore. Or TSM. Perfect. What an incredible analogy. I love it.
He just crashed 2 sword arts into each other, and then sword art left his car in America, and it got sold by Peter's Egg, and he never got the money back.
One, by the way. Even though I get it was actually Bjergsen who left and took the deal and went to the team like and all that. I get that he got lured in by like, the rival with the devil in his ear. But I also think, by the way, the idea that TSM leaves after like 11 years or whatever, the idea that Bjergsen didn't end his career in TSM always did sit not that well with me as well, mate. Because like that's like that shit where, if you ever look up like pictures where it's like Joe Montana on the Kansas City Chiefs, and you're like, this is just wrong, mate. What the hell? Like, why didn't he get to finish on the Niners? Like, there's something that's even more iniquity, in my opinion, to the whole TSM thing, is that by the end they didn't even have good players. Like, oh, by the way, the joke was fuckers like Bjergsen and Doublelift were still out there. They were just playing in the other teams. Like, they were just in good teams, mate. Like, it was just some bombs in TSM. It's actually sad how it ended. Anyway, whatever. We'll save a lot of that. That'll be the end of the episode, obviously, but we'll bring it back. It's still a few weeks away, but we'll get it done, guys. We'll get it done.
The other thing we obviously have to address, Thorin, is what was going on with LEC in the meta context this last week. Because of course, you know what happened, Thorin? After I made that tweet about I don't know how the LEC is going to operate when they fired 27 people, including engineers who fix all of the networking and other technological problems that happen at the LEC. Their executive producer, by the way, guys, 2 of their 3 observers, which are kind of important if you want replays that aren't literally the same replay you already saw.
I know where we're going on this. Come on.
You know what I mean? So, it turns out observers are important because what you can do in League of Legends is if you have more than one observer is you can kind of scrub back in the timeline and get different angles. I'm sure you guys are used to seeing that in LEC because what it looks like is they have a different look at the replay. They have those zoom ins on the funny death animations that you guys like to watch, and it gives a lot of character to the LEC. Now, if you don't have those extra observers, you can only take the feed that was live and then replay it. And by the way, God forbid you fucking miss something, because then it becomes a giant problem to go back because you have to have one observer at live at all times.
Where you literally cast them like a 2013 setup at this point in time.
Yeah.
It's so mad, isn't it? I know.
And
so
despite
mad.
the fact that, I don't know if you guys noticed, there wasn't much of a pre-show, if any pre-show, or post-show, or scripted segments, or graphics. So all of these things were very conspicuously missing because they got rid of a bunch of their writers. They got rid of a bunch of their content producers. And you guys might be wondering, well, Monty, nothing exploded. Like, it went very smoothly, especially by LEC pause broadcast KitKat break standards. And to those of you, I will tell you this. This is because they flew a bunch of people in from Dublin and North America at the last minute because it was going to be such a fucking dumpster fire that they needed to get extra bodies on the ground to fix these issues.
Why does that make it sound like they did the scene from the fucking 80s movie, Monty, where they went out to some like fucking cabin in the middle of the wilderness of like Northern Ireland or somewhere, and then they were like knocking on the door like, "What? Whoever you are, I told you I'm done with that life. I'm never coming back to these parts." And they were like, but Dougal, the greatest observer of all time in League of Legends, we need you. The world needs you. The summoners are going to be lost. He's like, "Oh, one last mission, and they'll give you a break." Like, it's so cringe, isn't it? I know. So cringe.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, this is what happened, guys, is that they fired all of these people, quickly realized that some of these people that they fired, it seems arbitrarily from North America, were actually kind of mission critical to what was going on.
Right.
So then they had to pay to fly a bunch of Riot people from Dublin and North America over to Germany, put them in hotel rooms, and spend extra money while they are paying the severance of the people that they fired.
Remember, guys, the punchline to the joke is what he just said there. Because they're in Germany, and we've mentioned for players how labor laws work, they're not only flying people in to do the job, they have the guy who can already do the job. He's there. But they have to tell him, "We'll pay you to do the job, but don't do the job." It's just like the ultimate esports moment of how stupid it is. Isn't it? I know, it's too good.
So anyway,
by the way, I was even thinking this myself, Monty. Do you know why also, low key, I actually became evil? I became like the fucking Joker or something, Monty, where I wanted chaos to reign supreme so we'd see like everyone exposed for what they are. Because one of the reasons I actually low key pulled for there to be a massive fucking 2-hour pause is because you know what I mentioned all those past weeks when we talked about the LEC talent? You fucking sidelined Quickshot, the best Phil guy whose whole shit is like charisma, working with the talents, or impromptu material, and studio work, like crowd work. Like, that's literally, by the way, the number one person. If people don't know, the only reason I had an analysis career in CSGO is because we used to have loads of tech problems, and it meant it was really boring because you'd have to just put a screen up for like 20 minutes on. So instead, me and Richard Lewis just would banter, and that's how our whole style actually came to be, was we just learned to fill for like an hour randomly at the drop of a hat. It's a real skill, you know. If people don't know, if you have that skill, you are worth your weight in gold. You can essentially save any broadcast. Like, because the joke is, if you do it well when you fill, first of all, it's not boring. People keep watching. But then also, every now and then you stumble on some gold. You actually come up with like a straight fire, like sort of segment or silly thing to say, and then that becomes like viral or becomes part of the lore of it. So the idea, like, even though it hasn't happened yet, they've saved themselves on this first one, the stay of execution. I feel like it's inevitable they're going to have some sort of big problem at one point in time, because as you say, the biggest joke is, even when they had the full complement of staff, for the last, I mean, it's been years now, Monty, that LEC especially has had a big problem with this, with the fucking pauses of just you know how many times, especially because the worst thing to me is it's the amount of times they get the whole draft phase done and then the pause happens like 1 minute into the game. Like, that's always been the biggest fucking killer of the energy for me. Because think about how long that fucking draft phase lasts and how you're hyping yourself up. And then the worst thing I've always thought is this, Monty. This is why I'm going to bring in the fill topic. This is where actually I always knew that their League of Legends broadcast didn't understand filling, because they would always do that thing where they would let it indeterminately hang in the game for like 10 minutes before they threw it back to the desk. And that meant sometimes these casters or analysts just talked around the topic for the 10 minutes. And I can tell you, you know this, Monty, that's actually the worst tactic when you fill. When you fill, what you do is once you know, it's like, I don't know how long it's going to be. It could be a minute, could be 5. What you do is you actually immediately change topic so that then you're off over here filling, and then you wait for the person to tell you, right, we're coming back in a minute. And then you bring it back into the topic and sort of go like, right, anyway, guys, we're about to start the game again. So we're watching out for these and then you do that, right? It's the way to bring the energy back up. If you do what they do, unfortunately, which is you just hope it's fixed any second now, it's actually way more awkward because you just feel like you're in some crazy purgatory on the broadcast where like they're just talking in circles around the draft and around this and around what happened last week. But then you're like, the whole time it's making your brain like start the game. But if you'd actually made it fun and done some skit or something, or done some like bring it out of it and do some joke about some player, you actually sort of make it a bit lighthearted. You can sort of take some of that pressure off yourself. So I think they've actually missed a trick on that one, mate. I actually think they could have done a way better job in that regard.
Sure. I mean, and also, you know, you talk about Quickshot being gone. The other person who was gone for a lot of the weekend was Shocks, who is doing IEM Katowice. So she wasn't there, I think, on the last 2 days of the broadcast and won't be there on subsequent weeks. So really, it couldn't have happened at a worse time. And by the way, guys, just because nothing broke this week doesn't necessarily mean that nothing's going to break in the future. And we will be doing a 4 Horsemen on this topic later this week. So we will be discussing a lot of the layoffs that happened more in depth over at Riot as well as at Activision Blizzard. So we are going to do a 4 Horsemen on that topic. It is coming up later this week. So we'll leave that discussion to the episode later on. But I'm just tired of getting flamed by people on the internet who are telling me, well, Monty, you were just worried about nothing. It's like, no, actually a bunch of shit happened that was stupid and expensive that Riot had to do in order to fix this. So it wasn't a disaster. But in the end, it just goes to show how stupid the initial decision ended up being.
Also, I'm very suspicious about this, Monty. I never claimed to have any inside info when we did that past episode, where I actually started by saying that if you go and look at the names, it doesn't appear that's esports people. Actually, it looked like it was people who work on the law of the game or sound design. And so it looked like it was actually like development people, not like a esports side that we're on from Valorant or League of Legends or whatever. But actually, obviously, the joke is, this is why I'm suspicious, Monty. That's because that was the initial info, and then the initial list of names, bizarrely on Reddit, was mainly people who were like sound designers, famous Redditors. And then what happened was we'd heard also initially people said, I don't think there's that many esports people though. That was like the vibe coming from the industry. But you'll notice it was like a delayed fucking release of the info, Monty. The reason I bring this up is suspicious is because if you know how a media cycle works, if it's not in the first wave, it won't be remembered by most people. What happens is everyone hears the first piece of info, half hear the next piece, and then maybe a few hear the last piece if you keep updating the story. So if the random plebs will actually think what we just said at the beginning, like, it's just people who worked on like, you know, the game concepts. No. Well, the thing is, it seems like it went from, there's a few people in esports. And then by the time LEC was about to begin, LEC themselves, the talent, were like hinting this in their tweets. They were actually like, no, it's actually loads of people. It's loads behind the scenes. So I even wonder about the suspicious, like delayed sort of staged release of that. It just seems a bit cynical. It seems like it worked out perfectly for Riot, basically, you know.
Yeah, it could have also been that some of the European people found out later.
There was a weird thing where they found out from like an email when they were out or some bullshit, right?
Yeah, it was like in the middle of the night or something. I don't know. The whole thing was a little janky, to say the least. And also, a lot of the people, just so you guys know, a lot of the people that were actually let go from the LEC were people that had been there for like 7 or 8 years. I mean, I know some of them from working with Riot back in the day. And to lose the executive producer of that broadcast is really crazy. I think it's very unusual that it went that high up, and especially to the people who had kind of been the stewards of the vision, because a lot of these people were content people. They were the people who were like doing the music videos that you guys like and doing all the shoulder content and all the fun little skits and stuff that they did on LEC. And with those people gone, like that was a huge part of the LEC's identity as a product. And like, I don't think that's going to be replaced. Like maybe I'm wrong, But it seems like if you get rid of those people, who the fuck is making it anymore? So are you going to rehire them? Probably not. Are you just going to hire like freelancers to do that? Maybe. But I think we're looking at what is going to be a pretty drastic dip in quality, where a lot of the fun extra stuff has just now been taken away. And so it's just going to be games and that's it, basically.
Also, we touched on it, but we should actually reference what the TSM Dunc story is. So if people forget, TSM Dunc is the social media manager of TSM, and he's the one that you will remember infamously in, I think, like 2021, did that tweet where when they lost the game, he wrote Sag and then posted a meme, which was the "Are you winning, son?" And the variant was "You have hung yourself and killed yourself" when the dad walks in the room. He then claimed, right? This is to this day, by the way, I'm sorry, I have a pretty good read for when people are genuinely like telling them. I do not believe, and I never will, this excuse. He claims, by the way, that he actually intended the meme. He didn't know it was a suicide meme. He thought that like the son was just walking off out of the room, even though, as I pointed out on that episode, if you remember, like what sort of like dimensions of this room are there? Like he's sort of leaving through a parallel like universe wall where the dad, like none of it makes any sense. And then also the obvious thing to say is actually, despite what you plebs at home are going to think, that's not what social media managers do. They don't just fire a tweet out of nowhere. If you don't know, by the way, in orgs like G2, I've heard they put the tweets into like a group chat or like EG. That's why that fucking Nicole Point Jameson was nicking tweets. Like they have like a group where they sort of like, hey, what do you think of this? And someone's like, yeah, banger, post it. And then they post it. And that's why they go, we're in with all the Zoomers. Because if you don't know, by the way, Zoomer culture, Richard nailed this, is just that little fucking demon fucking piece of shit guy from Return of the Jedi who's just next to fucking Jabba the Hutt.
Salacious Crumb is his name.
Yeah, you're like, Richie, you guys don't have Lamborghinis, Lena. That's just who you guys are. So if you don't know, this guy was just a fucking pleb. And the worst thing was, not only after he's fucked up like that, did he behave that way, but even better, look, I don't know if I'll ever make a video of this person. He's not really that famous or probably worth my attention, but he did do some hilarious stuff. Because I'll tell you one thing I actually found the other day, and this is just a punchline that's fucking amazing, Monty, is one, like something like 5 to 6 months earlier, because he worked in fucking social media, he himself had critiqued another org doing an edgy joke and saying something like implying you should probably be fired for that. And even better, if you just go to his Twitter, guys, and do an advanced search and just search for the word delete, his most famous go-to tweet, he has done this like week to week for years, is to tell friends, delete that tweet jokingly. That's actually it for years. That's his go-to, was to tell everyone else to delete tweets and that they're not funny. And the joke is he then did the most insanely like fucking rake to the face bullshit tweet. Anyway, the point is he has obviously lost his job. So the key thing I want to say is this, is obviously TSM's on the downfall anyway. Oh, and then lastly, he also, like every salty little loser, you know what's brilliant about that Simple tweet, Monty? You remember the one where Simple flamed me and said I'm a piece of shit, exposed me? Is it every little loser who's ever had anything against me in the industry all rushed out like, Simple, and then they all, like that Crumb guy, like you'll just say it, they all just fucking fevered around him, and they were all just, you're the goat for that, Simple, you're the best, and they were all just posting things, even though, by the way, that looks so bad now, because guys, Simple literally did a reflection interview and apologized in person to me, and privately had already done it as well. So the joke's on you, like he's not even backing you up, you daft cunts, you're just on your own on this one. But even better, right, he's one of the ones who laughed at the fact that Simple said that I should get a job. Well, you know what, you can get a job now, can't you? That's how karma works, bitch. Yeah. Enjoy that one. So here's the thing. The problem with TSM, Monty, was this. I'm going to bring back my fucking children's TV presenter mode. The problem with TSM was you didn't want him to drag on, did you, Komodo Dragon there? They couldn't just drag on. The thing about them is, if you were a TSM fan, look, you're a sheep. You might think you were a cool sheep, but all you ever were was a sheep hanging on. And now you can't hang on anymore. So if you're some fucking loser who's just going to carry water for TSM throughout the fucking deserts of esports winter, well, then you get what you deserve, don't you? There you go, whatever. Prop comedy.
Where do you get these things?
Those actually come out of Kinder Eggs, I can't lie. And by the way, the biggest meme of all actually is that I eat Kinder Eggs instead of the toys. I don't, this isn't a trial about me. I'm not on trial here. I don't have to answer any questions. And when I'm not sponsored by Kinder Egg, I just enjoy them. Okay.
Look, Kinder Eggs are great. I grew up eating those. I appreciate it. Plus, it provides you with fun desk props. So there you go.
Exactly.
Oh man, yeah. The TSM stuff, guys. We will have a little. We'll try and do the TSM episode for you.
We can tie it together. The joke is when the next LEC broadcast comes on, because of how bad it'll be. So when it has to do the 3-hour pause, someone will just throw a bag of Kinder eggs on the stage. So there you go. Fucking, I've heard this is straight fire. Start making these toys. Like you put the three things together.
They can just open them on the desk, and then they'll have content. What will they come up with without writers? We'll wait and see. Oh yeah, the other thing that was interesting about the Riot firings, I know we're kind of going back to that again, was that Riot canceled their streaming service, which is actually enormous news, guys.
Yes.
Because this was part of the roadmap for esports that John Needham announced in April of last year. And we'll go into this more in depth on the Four Horsemen, but they literally say that it's a key part of their monetization because they can't sell media rights. And so they're going to do things like, when you're on LoL Esports with the Riot Games player, they'll be able to sell you skins that the players are playing. If they notice in your account that you're like an Orianna main and, there's a fancy Orianna skin and you don't have it in your inventory, like, this guy plays Orianna. Here you go. Here's a link to buy it, maybe at a discount. You watch all the T1 games. Here's your T1 fan pack opportunity.
Great idea.
It is a great idea. It sounded really cool. Yeah. And by the way, Riot has been working on this streaming service for years now. Years. And they fired everybody and canceled the project. So if I was a team, Thorin, if I was a team and I was being told by Riot that this is, in the middle of esports winter, this is the way that we're going to make up some of that money for media rights and we're going to sell your cool little team fan packs and now this shit's gone, I think I'd be pretty mad. I think I'd be pretty mad if I was a team.
Yes. Oh, there's two things here. One is, first of all, imagine being a dev working on that, right? You're just slaving away every day. Then you wake up like, the whole thing's cancelled, but we never even released anything. Yeah, it's over. It's over. Oh, brilliant. And then secondly, dude, this is the part about esports winter people aren't paying attention to, Monty, is notice how when you hear the stories come out from behind the scenes of what's being axed on the budgets, guys, this is really alarming. Like, they're not just axing like you all think, like silly people who did a worthless job or was some sort of just weird, like, PR hire or something. No, they're axing like they're long-term projects that were essentially their golden goose. Like, these were the things that were going to actually be the thing. Like, if you don't get it, guys, that's almost like a Riot, like, approach to, like, almost like their own version of fucking Steam or something there. The concept there, like, mixed with Twitch. Like, that sounds like actually that could have been the game changer for their whole company in esports. And they're not just, like, pausing it. It's just over. The project's just over. That's actually really fucking alarming, mate, because I always did get the vibe that the plan for Riot the whole time was to be like Epic Games and to have multiple games and then have your own store and then have your own things integrated and then integrate the esports side. And that's like the end goal. That's where you make the bazillion dollars. So if you're cancelling this now, I mean, think about how long, guys, it takes Riot to do things. It takes them years. They don't do like brand new engine. It takes them years and years to update the map and stuff. So this actually implies to me, like, mate, right now, if you're in Riot, it feels like you can't even see a month in the future, mate. You have no clue what the future of esports is for you now. None.
Yeah, not to mention that, the lead of their MMO left to go found his own studio to make a different MMO. So imagine having all of the resources of Riot Games and then leaving an MMO that you're making and presumably that you have control of. So my question is, what the hell happened there? Because like Ghostcrawler just pieced out, founded his own studio, and then now is making an entirely different MMO. So, I mean, it's a lot of questions about what's going on over at Riot right now. Obviously, the games industry in general is hurting because they overhired during the pandemic, and the Microsoft merger with Activision Blizzard meant that there were a lot of redundancies.
By the way, is that just an American thing? Because I've noticed that does seem to be a weird thing in esports that happens over and over again every time we have the boom and bust cycle, Monty. It happened with MLG a few years back, you might remember. What they'll do is they'll hire more and more and more and more and more people doing all these roles. They'll brag about how many people they've hired and like how big and then the second they get into problems, they slash, not just like people. They slash tend to be the people they just hired. Like they just cut them all off again. And it's like, and so you end up with this scenario. Someone thinks they're joining for like 5 years and they're there for a year. Like it's just like an American approach to doing it or something. I've heard like at the time, I think someone said cynically, you also sometimes do it based on quarterly earnings or whatever, Monty. Like if you know you're not going to make it to like this quarter and you've got like certain costs, you fire people so next quarter they won't have the salary or something. Maybe there's something like that involved, but it seems pretty alarming.
I think that, so there's a couple things. Sometimes that happens because there's an expectation that when you take on investment that you are going to attempt to grow aggressively, and you're going to,
right.
and so basically, like, a lot of times you have to try to grow aggressively if you have this like, you know, VC investment. And so if you're not doing that, then the investors get mad at you because they're investing in something that's supposed to explode in value. And the only way you can do that sometimes, a lot of the time, is by losing money in the short term in order to gain money in the long term. And so if your projections are not actually lining up with the number of expenses that you've incurred, and you're running lower on investment, or you have a burn rate that's unsustainable, oftentimes you have to cut down the size of your staff at that point in time. I think in this case, though, and with a lot of the games companies, it is really that they saw a lot of increase in user base and spending during the pandemic because nobody could do anything else. And people had a lot of disposable income because they weren't going out and doing anything. So people were more willing to spend money on video games. And so I think companies saw that, hired a bunch of people because of the numbers they got during the pandemic, realized, oh shit, when people can go outside and do other things and spend their money in other ways again, their spending goes down and their playtime goes down. And now we're going to readjust, you know, our staff sizes to be more normal along those terms. So that's what I would guess. That's what I would guess. So you want to talk about some League of Legends games? Any teams catch your fancy this week, Thorin?
I mean, what region are we doing?
We can go back and talk about LEC some more, if you like, because we have, you know, the important games coming up with playoffs. And, you know, we have kind of switched up the playoffs format, which is kind of interesting because now we're dealing with the big bracket of the 8 teams in best of 3s. And then, you know, as we get
to BO5 later,
as we get later in, it's BO5. So this should be pretty exciting, I think, over the next 2 weeks to have like a big double elimination bracket. I mean, I think the LEC format last year delivered a lot more interest, at least for me. And they've mixed it up a little bit, changed the format so we don't go kind of into the 2 GSL groups. But, you know, one big double elimination bracket still perfectly fine, considering we're doing 3 of these plus the playoffs over the course of the year. And I think there have been some teams that, especially like BDS, that has been surprising. And as the dust settles here, I think we can say like Mad Lions probably exceeded expectations. SK,
you
know, even though SK kind of faltered down the stretch after a strong initial performance, they've been pretty good overall. So it has been, I think, a fun initial like winter split of LEC so far.
I mean, to me, I also do think that if you watch this last week, like for the first week or two, a lot of the like I feel like there's been a lot of parity in the league, but I also feel there was a lot of bad games in the league, which is the downside. I want parity when they're obviously all excellent and it's just people battling each other and see who's better. I will say I do think on the last week, some of the teams did somewhat stabilize. Like if you have been watching in past weeks, one of the actual alarming things if you're a G2 fan is, as well as having these random losses out of nowhere, where in theory they should win every game, Caps actually was looking pretty lackluster. What fucking wasn't this last week? That fucking Akali game was bonkers. Like in that one,
it was very good.
Even said this on Twitter, dude. If I'm Fnatic, I would I wouldn't even feel that bad, mate, about this loss. Like the way that Yike on Xin Zhao and fucking Caps on Akali played, like, mate, they would have beaten every team that day. Like they were really, really smurfing. Like that was fucking sick. So it's actually quite cool that just before the bracket stage, G2 sort of like comes alive, and now like we actually have a reason to believe there's like a strong team, because obviously BDS did look super clean. They have done really good job. And then I actually think now, look, I don't know if I believe BDS actually is a top 2 team, but for now they've earned that status. So if I put G2 in that bracket, then after that, you've just got all these mad dark horses. Like think about it, right? They might have looked a bit sketchy at times, but Vitality wins games. Team Heretics have had games where the top side looked good. You obviously have had Fnatic, have had a few pop-offs. Some of their Razok Reload have had some monster games. Like Oscaridin's actually one of the sleeper fucking best players in the LEC now. Like it's actually it's pretty competitive. Look, I don't actually include the Mad Lions there, you know, so I think they sort of punched above their weight on that one. But fair play, everyone did say they'd be 10th, so obviously they're not 10th. The problem I have with that one, Monty, goes like this. It's a simple way to say it. It's like, The real reason we said you're 10th, guys, is because you took a championship roster and completely dismantled it except one player. So then we all went, well, we don't know these players, so you're probably the worst. And you were like, but I'm not the worst. I'm just half shit. It's like, well, but you used to be a champion, though. Yeah, but now I'm just half shit, though. That you said that it was bad that I kicked those players. Well, it is bad, though. You're not champion anymore. Yeah, but I'm not the worst, though. I'm not the absolute worst anymore. Like, what are you competing for here? Like, I don't even get the self-respect of that trash talk, mate. I mean, like, I'll never understand the people who go, everyone said we'd lose 10 games. We lost 9. Like, what are you fucking cheering about, dickhead? Like, what on earth are you talking about? That's terrible. Just fucking have some self-respect and some dignity, mate. Just fucking climb out.
I also think, the logic that we have to infer from the Mad Lions fans is it's better to be 5th place in Spanish than first place and not Spanish.
Yes. Basically, it's some pure nationalism, I know, isn't it? Exactly.
They would literally rather be 5th place in Spanish. I don't know. That's not for me, guys. I don't really care. Like, when I watch sports, I'm not...
Actually, it is on, and to be fair, their behaviour, Monty, of the Mad Lions fans is entirely actually on brand for the Spanish nationality. What is the Spanish flag's colour? It is red and yellow. And the thing is, on the one hand, in half the games, this team is yellow. They're kind of cowardly. They're shit. But then the other games, all their fans are mad. They're just angry, red anger. So combine the two, and you have a team that's right in the middle with a win rate of roughly, give me a break. Because the problem with this one is this, Monty, right? If you enjoyed the Mad Lions show, I'll give them fair play. They were the spoiler of this particular BO1 phase. They did a great job compared to expectations. And some of the players, I would say the obvious one is the Merwin guy in top lane. Some of them also did kind of actually show me like something. Like, yes, he's got kind of a spicy game. I actually enjoy watching him play. My problem is this. Elyoya is still a stud. That's all great. I still don't buy the rest of the team, mate. Like, you pick which 2 out of the 3, but 2 of these 3 you will never know in 3 years. If they're even in the league, they'll be the worst players. And these aren't the next great players. That's the other problem. I do give them props that it looks like part of what got them their wins was cohesion and people coaching the team well and drafting well. It wasn't that they're not the team where you look at them like, oh my God, where did they find all these ERL talents? It's like, I don't think anyone really thinks that. Fair play if someone wants to double down and say I'm wrong, but I think I'm going to short these players, put it that way.
I mean, I think it's just interesting that in Merwin's case in particular, he has such a wide champion pool.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it?
He's only played the same champion twice. One champion twice, which is Gwen. Otherwise, he's had some wacky ones, like the Akali top, so they were able to do some deceptive things in draft. Varus top, Fiddlesticks. You know what I mean? Like, this has been a very interesting champion pool for him. And I think that he's shown a lot, especially for a rookie player, that has been encouraging. Now, he's not been great. I mean,
playing Fiddlesticks is hilarious, isn't it? Like, he's a fucking rookie. That's actually like fucking hilarious, mate.
I mean, like,
what a ridiculous pick. The fucking Varus, that was even pretty cool, actually. Like, it's been fun to watch. He's just a fun player. He mixes it up.
Yeah. So I think there are encouraging signs, and Elyoya has been surprisingly good at being the captain of this team. So credit to him as well.
I have to give them props for. I was wrong on that part, Monty. I also thought, this is where I was wrong, I actually did think that whole like power of friendship, like just being with other Spanish people will have the aura effect on Elyoya and he will be happy and a captain and lead them and take these rookies. Like, I actually was worried about that, Monty. I have to say my read would have been this guy didn't seem like a good captain figure. Remember, he was only a rookie, mate, in 2021. Like, he's still quite young. He's obviously like kind of a stud player. And he clearly, by the way, in the old Mad Lions was played around. So I even worried, like, mate, that's the sort of player that actually might like lose patience with people who are worse than him or might think like, I'm supposed to win now. Remember, he's supposed to be in a G2. He probably thinks he's supposed to win the championship like he did in Mad Lions last year. So I was worried that actually that might like tank his morale or it might make him like not play as well or he might not be a demon in the server. None of that's been the case. It actually seems like, quite frankly, he does seem super fucking loving the vibe.
Agreed.
He seems like enjoying this team. I mean, quite frankly, it hasn't affected his performance. He's had some fucking great games. He looks awesome.
Yeah, he seems really comfortable playing with his teammate. I think that was what was surprising about Mad Lions is they came out of the gate with a lot of, aggression and synergy and like willing to follow calls. And they haven't felt really reluctant in the way that you think about with a lot of rookies, or with, I should say, in the case of what I'm about to say, newer players to the league. Like, I know Saken has played before, but Saken plays like he's terrified of League of Legends every time we
Man,
see
he
him on
plays
stage.
like fucking like Bambi walked after 1 second of being born. He looks like he did just play League of Legends. He's a rookie, but like today, it looks like he's like, oh, I'm on my second game. Like, because mate, some of those are criminal. Like, I saw one thing, Monty, this is when I knew Perk's hate had gone so far beyond the pale. Are you ready for why? Because yes, Monty, I agree. Perk's Zakali was fucking shit, wasn't it? We all agree that. But I'll tell you what, Monty, he at least tried to do stuff. When they were saying on Reddit that his Akali was worse than Saken's. Saken didn't even do anything. He just actually was invisible on that pick and then just fucking lost the game. Like, listen, Perks might have been shit, but to try something, at least he tried, essentially, boys. Like, the Zeka one, no joke. I've been saying this all the time, Monty. The problem in Karmine Corps is you have to do like tiers of who's the worst part of the problem. So that's why I know you actually just irrationally hate Born Upset if they're the first names out your mouth. Like, that wouldn't even be where you'd start the triage, Monty. And even then, look, I even personally think if we're then continuing, what's the most important thing to address? I don't even go to Cabashard first. I mean, as you just saw, he had one game that was a banger, didn't he? He did have a game where he could play. There's other games where he just wasn't in the match. The problem is, Targamas is the most criminally obvious one. And now, you know, I saw you did this because everyone's listened to those voice comms. Now we all know the joke is the Bo guy talks all the time and Targamas never fucking talks. He doesn't even give basic comms. The joke is his fucking ADC talks more than he does, which is bonkers. And then also, that's the egregious one. Like, everyone could say that's bad. But then Saken just doesn't ever do anything. He just is a bad player at LEC, mate. And the weirdest part for him is he's just getting his picks. Like, he's picking the champions he plays and he still does nothing. Like, I'm not joking, Monty. Bear in mind, he is someone who's been around for years and he was in LEC already. I have never seen someone who actually looked like, I thought he was at least going to slide in and be like the 5th or 6th best mid laner, mate, if you saw how he's doing ERLs. I have never seen anyone as permanently shook as this entering the league. Like, I could forgive it if it was a rookie, if it was a guy who's like his first ever split. You know how Targamas came in? If people don't know, I think Targamas only played like a single year in the ERL. I think maybe the same with Adam. And then they came straight to LEC. They were on top teams having a contend. I always thought, like, that's incredible that they didn't like choke and this guy's been around for years, guys, and he actually, no joke, every match looks like it's, you know, this concept, Monty, comes from golf. The idea of that thing called the yips. It's an illness where people psychologically get so that even though they might have been a brilliant player, it's actually the famous thing that Charles Barkley has in golf, if you don't know. They can't hit the ball. What happens is when they go to hit the ball, their brain sort of like short circuits and they just fuck it up last second for no, even though supposedly, Charles Barkley is a great example. Supposedly, by the way, if he's in practice and no one's there, he can just hit it awesome and he's a great player still. But every time he's on camera, he can't do it. It's like a joke because it just gets in his head somehow. That guy has something like this because I'm telling you guys, the worst take is the one where people claim they watched him in the RLs. I'm like, I told you he wasn't LEC level. He didn't play like this. I promise you. He never did any of this shit in the RLs. Like, somehow there wasn't the same pressure on him. Like, in this league, it just looks, that's what I would diagnose as his issue. It looks like he can't ever pull the trigger. He just doesn't do anything, which I think is, by the way, the worst way to lose. I can actually forgive a Hillasang or Adam Int if I know you were trying something that like had agency in the game. If you just sort of do nothing and lose the game, that's always the biggest bummer for me because I always feel like that's a bigger frustration than an int to a teammate. Is the guy didn't do anything, he didn't follow you up, he didn't do the play, didn't use his ult. Like that's hard to deal with because that's psychological. What do you do with psychological problems? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the other issue, Thorin, is like people might be more high on Saken now because Karmine Corps won a couple games, you know, to close this out. But I do beg you to remember that it actually didn't matter whether BDS won or lost the last match because they were still going to be top 2, and that's all that matters really when it comes to
you could even play. They shouldn't give away anything. They shouldn't do a weird draft or pull something out. Right? They should just play a normal game and then win or lose. Yeah.
Right. And also in the other game that they played against SK, he really didn't have a lot to do with those victories. And yeah, he didn't die in either of these games, but that's just how he plays. I mean, him not dying is actually part of the problem in some ways because he doesn't go in. And it's like when he's on Azir, and if you actually sit down and watch these guys, and I was doing these VOD reviews on my stream this week, if you actually look at the way that he plays some of these team fights on the Azir, he's actually just doing nothing in these team fights. Yes. He's not hitting anybody. He's not dealing any damage. The SK Gaming game was won because Bo and Cabashard just banged the top lane 24/7 and got huge advantages in the top side of the map. And the game that they played against BDS was frankly like a giant draft diff. I think that was a brilliant draft by Yamato. And by taking Bard and Olaf on R4 and R5 there against like Nico, Vi, Renekton, Ashe, Renata, basically Cabochard, as long as he has ult up, just auto wins the fight because he runs down their carries and there's literally nothing to stop him from doing that. And you also have the Bard against some terribly low mobility backline champions. And Zeka just really doesn't do anything in that game. Like, it is entirely carried, honestly, partially by Targamas, who had some nice plays, had some bad ults too, but did have some good ones as well. It was kind of up or down. Upset on the Kalista, Cabochard on the Olaf, and Bo on the Maokai.
That the only time that fucking Targamas turned up was when it didn't matter. The second it didn't matter magically. This is another reason, guys, why we're not idiots. Like, behind the scenes, if you don't know, I know now people are going to lie, mate. This was not what everyone behind the scenes was saying about this lineup. People were actually hyped that it would be good. I've told you I went out and asked a bunch of the different teams and players. I've got mixed bags. Some people said they were good in scrims. Some people said they were whatever in scrims. Some people said they were good, but they didn't think they'd make it on LEC. But the point is, obviously, Targamas didn't play the way he did in the first 7 games. They wouldn't have signed the guy. But sadly, what you sort of see when the pressure went away, Monty, is what this team could have been. Like obviously the second one never got fixed, but the rest of the players performed. They played like the way you'd hope.
Yeah. And Targamas
on Monty's YouTube channel, by the way, he's done all the big matches basically the last like couple of weeks. He's done like sort of the review one. And if you don't know, this actually is one area I'll give you props, Monty, is you've actually nailed it in a way the others haven't. Because here's the flaw that the others have. You're all going to watch these videos, right, and see like, oh, wait a minute, it's like a whole series from fucking LCK, but it's like 40 minutes. Oh, it's like an edited down highlights version. Yeah, but here's the thing. What Monty actually did isn't what LS and Dom are doing. They just have clips from their live stream that get turned into a video and they get edited. I'll tell you the flaw of that is when they do it live, a lot more of it's reacting and entertainment. It's things like, oh my God, Chris, Monty's watching the VOD. So because he's watching the VOD, it's pure analysis. Like, it's actually, by the way, it's some of your best stuff. It reminds me of back in the day when you would actually have the setup for the LCK. Like, if people actually want to watch like that Gen GT one, you've got that one there, all the like really big topics, because if you know, he was trying to do the bangers only approach where he just gets like the big game. So obviously Karmine Corps games weren't good, but that was the big topic. Everyone wanted to know what's going on. Let's all diagnose it. So they're all on his YouTube channel, GG MonteCristo. Check it out. Like, if you like the old school style, this is actually, I think, the best analysis content. Because as I say, the flaw of the Dom stuff is it's just a live cut of him and all the people joking about shit, isn't it? It's not really like hardcore analysis like he would do if he had the VOD.
Yeah, and also all of the unedited versions go on my new Bangers Only YouTube. So I dump literally every game I do into a secondary YouTube now. So the edited stuff is obviously faster because it cuts to like, the actual meat and potatoes, and it isn't just like one game from pick and ban to the end. But if there is a game,
that's why I like it though, because I told you I always watch that 40-minute edited version of the NFL games. I just watch this like that. It's actually a pretty cool way to like watch the match you didn't watch.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just not gonna. I'm not making enough money yet where I can pay to like have all of that edited. Look, I would love for you guys for me to slam every single match in the edited format. So watch them, and then I'll have enough money to do that someday. But in the meantime, if you are curious, there is a separate Bangers Only, which I will link below. That is a new YouTube channel that I have where all of the matches I do, and I'm doing probably 5 to 7 a day at the moment. So it's 6 days a week, so I'm getting through a lot of these. And so it's more of a curated approach to League of Legends where I'm literally just like not watching Immortals Dignitas. And Karmine Corps being bad is interesting, and also I have a joke. We have jokes on the stream that we have to feed the raccoons trash occasionally. So I let people like request bad games because they just want to see my reactions. But for the most part, we keep it to kind of the best of the best. And even some one-sided matches, because it's important to track the good teams kind of in every game that they're playing, right? Like, so even if it's kind of a one-sided matchup, we often still watch the best teams in the world. So, Gen G,
Holy
T1,
moly, he
BLT.
even has fucking LNG versus Thunder talk one, which was a travesty. You've had that game. Okay, fair enough. You've been going deep on these Fair X. Holy moly, he really has. He's doing all the gamut here. Holy moly. Okay.
Well, the LNG one was important because it's LNG's like first match of the year.
So it was shocking as well, yeah.
Yeah. So it was, and it was also an upset. So I needed to see it to see like how LNG did and whether Thunder Talk is legit. Because, UCal has actually been kind of sneaky good the last
he's not
couple
bad,
of
actually,
years.
yeah.
Like people don't know this because you don't like dig into the LPL, but UCal's actually been really good. And so there was a chance when I saw that result that he actually has good players around him now, which could have meant, that Thunder Talk could have been potentially, quite a good team. So yeah, there's fun stuff. There's fun stuff going on. And you guys can kind of keep track of that. I also am very likely to bring back my power rankings on my personal channel as well, which I think is going to be very important for people who are trying to keep track of, how teams around the world are doing, because there's just a ridiculous amount
Here's
of
the
League of
question
Legends.
for you. Here's the question. It is the $1 million question. Potentially, literally. Here's the question. So everyone obviously has done the armchair GM approach of saying like, hey, Trimbio's on the desk, even on LEC, just bring him over. Hey, guys, Abadagi's out there. Just an interview. Abadagi's there, isn't he? Like, Finn, Finn's out there. He was an LEC player. They've done all that, right? But there's the real question I have, Monty. It's a two-parter. One is, do you actually think, though, that these wins at the end mean Karmine Corps will make no roster moves?
Yes, I do think that.
If not, because I'm worried about that too. If not, if they decide not to make any roster moves, is there one that you think is the most important one? What would your most important move be if they choose not to do it? Do you also think they won't do it? Because I'm really scared they'll just keep the same 5-man lineup, mate. I think they will. I just think they will.
I think so. Here's what I think. I think that they're going to look at this and they're going to decide, well, we were doing well in the early game of some of the games that we lost and we threw. These are fixable mistakes. And so we're going to, try to run this back, especially they'll ignore the fact that they basically got a garbage win potentially against BDS, even though, and by the way, guys, I think that win was entirely thanks to Yamato. I think that draft was almost unlosable.
Oh, he was killing it.
I think it was almost unlosable. It was a fucking brilliant draft by him. And by the way, if you guys didn't know this is exactly the same way this last week that we saw D+ beat Gen G in game 1 of their best of 3, which is that D+ was on red side. They R5 Olaf into Varus Ashe. This is going to be becoming a more common tactic. Right. But because Yamato is aware of what's going on in other regions, I think he just yoinked that right out of D+. And if D+ can stomp all over Gen G doing that, you better believe that's
good logic. Yeah.
Karmine Corps can take down BDS.
That could be piloted without your players having to just be gods, essentially. Right?
Yeah, be better. Actually, just literally be better.
Yes.
So I think it was a great draft, and I believe that Yamato probably cribbed that from D+, which no shame in doing. That's why we pay attention to other regions, because they have good ideas that we can use to win games.
I also appreciate, by the way, anytime someone actually does the pure banter of just Adaming with an Adam champion, which I just appreciate that. I think it's funny. It's like, yeah, that's right. Guess what, you fuck? We can do it to you as well. Enjoy the Olaf bitch. Enjoy.
So yeah, look, I think it was a good win, but I also think it's kind of a fake win because BDS didn't have to win. It didn't matter whether they won or lost, really.
I can't lie. I would come in and I'd tell Targamas this. I'd go, great bad game. Now take a magical fucking journey out of this team.
Yeah.
Mate, what the fuck? I'm not joking. Part of me low-key hates when everyone does just bang on one player, but I've also never seen one player that sort of deserved it as much as this. Because the real problem is this, Monty. I'll just throw this out there, by the way. Even though I'm about to say something that's against my own interests, I do think it's bonkers that we get the comms from teams that are shit. It happened with Excel last year as well, remember, when they were all time because the problem with the comms is, by the way, two things. One of them is really funny, but I'll leave it till a second. One is, this just almost confirms when certain people are really fucking having problems in the game, which is actually pretty dangerous. But then two, and this is the really fucked up angle, is obviously, I want to hear the comms. I think it is important to do it, but fucking hell. I feel like when you hear those comms, doesn't it just make it hard to even hide if the players are having problems? Part of me does feel principally in Counter-Strike, by the way, guys, they don't let these comms get out there. Players are really fucking touchy about this topic. Anyone can, because they're also worried about tactical things. I'm actually just shocked as to why they released them. You know what I mean? Because they did this again, like I say, with another team that was losing. It almost feels like you must know that the players are going to get scapegoated if you do that. I want the info. It's great to have it. It allows you to on the second thing I was going to say, I just remembered it was this, Monty. Are you ready for the real one? That I'll just, as usual, usual, turning piss into the fans' faces now. That is the way I like to do it. So here's what I'll say, guys. You know how when you listen to some of these comms, you go, oh my God, the level of insight I've just gotten is incredible. Now I know things about how this player plays, now he interacts with his teammates I never knew before. So imagine, right, if you had access to that info. Me and Monty have access to that info and have had for 10 years and know literally the player that was playing in the lane with the player that you then tell us we don't know anything about laning. Like, I've even come out, by the way, I've done a Richard Lewis before. Difference is I always just say that when I get things from players, it informs me. I've done his thing where, like, someone's told me, oh, this matchup, like, we couldn't have played it. I've said that, and then the guy on stream's like, I'm playing Plat, and that's not even how that matchup works. Meanwhile, they don't know that, like, literally fucking Perks AD's, like, telling me, like, how he... Like, so as usual, don't ever for a second, guys, imagine that we might have, like, access to players and coach and know these things and therefore have insight. Just assume that, like you, we're just bozos who saw an interview in a stream and are just speculating it all. In fact, if we ever tell you any really insightful thing, we probably just hate that person. Because that's the one thing they can never do. Somehow the biggest flaw of the fan is this. It's not that you guys don't know, by the way. You shouldn't. You're not in our position. But what you always do for some weird reason is assume that you know more than us and that we can't know more than you. Meanwhile, we're the only ones objectively who could know more than you because we just have access to them all, you idiots. Like, the saddest thing of all is, this is why, if people don't know, as a quick tangent, this is why in CSGO, I actually think I'm going to end up looking awesome for this because he's doing great in Na'Vi now. That's why I always doubled down on that LEC guy that was an OG, if you remember, Monty, because we could actually listen to the comms when we did Flashpoint. And so I knew that he was a good IGL. I could actually hear him making the calls, see them play out and win. So then when all the fans were going, here's a shit IGL, I was like, no, I'm going to double down on him. I just kept doubling down because I could actually do it. It's actually why also, unfortunately, because we don't have this for every team, you do make weird speculations. I'll give you a quick random one and we can move on. It's actually the one about Hans Sama. Do you know that thing back in the day where Cos, as an actual person outside of the game, he's a really shy guy. He's quite quiet. He doesn't like go out the way He's, even to this day, he doesn't try to make himself a superstar. He's not trying to be a huge streamer or anything. So as a result, people always had this thing behind the scenes that they said he was like that as a player in the game. And they said, like, you know, when he had Mickey X, it was like the bottler that never talked. The joke is, I don't know if this changed at some point, but everyone now says behind the scenes, he's the most vocal AD. And he's like the AD that essentially shot calls the whole game and like tells you the whole time. Like, he literally, are you ready for the cool details? Supposedly, he plans out his whole laning phase, Monty, like what waves he even wants the jungler to come on. And his whole game plan is like, try and win the game like 20 minutes into the game by just winning from laning phase. And then he literally, when he has any items or a champion with agencies, this is why, by the way, he's so much better on his champions than the ones that are just meta champions. When he has a Draven and he has the kills, he'll just shot call people around him and tell them, like, come now, group mid, we're going to fight for this objective. So the joke is, it actually, if you don't have inside contacts, sometimes you can come to, I've done this myself on this particular play, you can come to completely the wrong conclusion. But when you look into it, you can find some amazing details. This is why unironically, those voice comms are a gold mine, guys. It will blow your mind to just see who made what call, what connection was. Sometimes when they don't make a call, that's the craziest one that you were saying about the Saka one, right? So when people are in a fight and Targamas isn't calling like some shit he's obviously seeing on the screen, like that changes totally how you analyze the game at that point.
Yeah. And look, I think that it is hugely important for the success of the league for these comms to be put out there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's the same thing it's the same reason, Thorin, why I support player salary transparency, because the players may not like it, because then they get flamed because they have a giant salary. But it's like, just don't look at Twitter. And also, like, how sad are we going to be if you're making $1 million a year and somebody tweets a mean tweet that you don't deserve that money? I mean, grow up. Come on. Whereas the upside to this is absolutely enormous, because we get to have really interesting conversations about who is worth their value, right? Who is worth it in order to, you know, who is actually playing up to their level, who is of steel, who is overpaid. And these are really important questions, particularly during off seasons when there's not a lot of content and new contracts are being kind of laid out. So I think contract transparency, purely to create buzz around various leagues in League of Legends or Counter-Strike or any esports game, would be really, really good information to be out there publicly, because I think it actually keeps the fans engaged.
Use this example. You could also use this example, Monty. Even though it would play very badly for Karmine Corps, if you saw that, like, Bo and Opposite were on huge contracts, it would change how people discuss their performance, right? Meanwhile, let me spin it the other way. If you found out that Merwin from Mad Lions, I'm just using examples here, I'm obviously speculating, I'm not saying the behind the scenes before. If you found out actually that Merwin guy's on like a low salary, you'd be even more impressed. You'd be like, actually, these guys, they've killed it with the GM in. Exactly, I agree.
Yeah, and it also, I think, it saves certain teams from flames. Like, clearly Mad Lions is not going with an expensive roster, guys. So I think compared to how much they're paying, they probably are in like 8th to 10th place in the league when it comes to player salaries. I don't know for sure. That's my guess.
It's a good guess.
It's a good guess. They're in the bottom 3, almost certainly. Then what does that mean about their performance where they end 5-4? Right? It means like they've overperformed. And I think these are really interesting conversations that we could be having. And I think, in a similar way, releasing the comms are good. First off, these comms give no information about team strategy. Like, let's be very clear. There is no, draft phase discussion that is leaked that says like Yamato's like, oh, we could do this thing that we are planning on doing, but let's save it for a different game, or this scenario didn't play itself out. They're very careful about the information that they release. But what it has done is it's created an extraordinary amount of interest in Karmine Corps, and also a way to kind of diagnose their play that creates content. I mean, for example, I made a video called Karmine Corps Autopsy, where I go through their games and then I listen to the comms of that game immediately after, and I compare my analysis to what I'm learning from seeing that comm, and you can go check that out on my YouTube. I mean, Cage released a video about this. I think Dom released a video about this. So really, it's generated. What it's done is it's generated a phenomenal amount of interest.
Everyone's done it.
In the LEC, and particularly in Karmine Corps. So, and also people watch the Karmine Corps video on its own, and then all of the people who make videos watch the Karmine Corps video and then make their own videos on that. So the value that you get as a brand and the eyeballs and the obsession is just so good for Karmine Corps. Like, I'm not going to say losing is good, but like, this is the best way to lose. Let's be clear. The best way to lose is the way you lose when everyone's still fucking talking about you.
I'll give you the analogy, Monty. Someone who obviously works on the LFN network over on CSGO is obviously Kasad, the Serbian coach who has had like a decorated career in Counter-Strike. And if people don't know, he's taken up a coaching job again. He now coaches a team. It's that one from like Southeast Asia, Bleed, the org, but it's like a European team. And he's trying to qualify to the major and the RMR, right? Even though, Monty, if you actually saw this lineup of players, nobody would give a fuck. There would never be a thread about this. There would never be a comment. It's just a bunch of players where it's like a couple of them are okay, and then some of them are like, haven't made it yet, and some of them are just whatever. And the joke is, the main reason you watch and follow this, and everyone is in Counter-Strike, is just because of Kasad, their coach.
Yep.
Like, everyone's watching it to pull against him, to prey on his downfall. People who like him are pulling because they like him as a person. The whole discussion at all times is about what he thinks about like Huxley and G2, and how can he do it. And as you're saying, the joke is, that actually shows the value of this approach, because it means even when you lose, you're somehow one of the top most talked about teams. Whereas the joke there is like, bro, people are talking more about Bleed sometimes than like fucking Astralis, who has like a super team right now with Danish players. Like, that's because it's kind of expected they'll be good, whereas the Bleed one is bringing the strikes. I agree with you, Monty. This is why, low key, even though it was definitely detrimental to people's reputations, I do think releasing Breaking Point was genius from Team Liquid.
Oh, it's great.
They took a season where they hoped that they were filming what would be like a cool documentary of making like a Worlds run, and then when it went to shit, they released it so that, I tell you what, we all know fucking loads about that season, those players, and that particular time in a way we wouldn't if they were just an also ran. If they really had it just gone like to the playoffs and lost, no one would give a fuck. Like, it'd be like, that's a shame. Whereas like now, some of those scenes are iconic. We all remember Dardock and Loco smashing the keyboard. It was fucking amazing. So I actually think it is a great way to just bring attention. Yeah.
Well, and think about what happens in the future. Okay, so think about what happens right now. You have sponsors for Karmine Corp, right? Well, how are you going to get eyeballs on you when you are not even qualified for the next phase of the LEC? Well, you're going to create content that everybody's going to fucking watch and make content off of, right? Okay, so what happens if you keep doing this? Well, you probably can't get worse. Let's be honest, you probably can't get worse. So everybody's going to flock to this content next split when you either like get better or you make a roster change, because everybody's going to be curious about what's going on.
If you really were as cynical as I could be, Monty, I'm not sometimes, I actually am sort of like a fucking jaded optimist. I'm not really that cynical a person, but if you were really cynical, here's what you do, Monty. This is how you get 1 billion views on a YouTube video. You actually get in this time, because you've got a few weeks now, Monty, where you're not doing anything. Obviously, you wait for the next split, aren't you? What you do is this video, Karmine Corp. Look, I wouldn't advise he makes this. It actually will be something of a metaphorical career suicide. But if you want all the attention, just have Upset do a video where it's called called Upset Makes Excuses, and he just makes an excuse for every lane in every game. Just let him do that. Because by the way, he's one of those people, as I've told you in the past, who's really good at like coming up with the reasons to why like the matchup went this way. So first of all, he could do great content. It would be very interesting matchup analysis. But obviously, every hater in the world they'd have to watch this video. And by the way, the best part is, I promise you, they wouldn't watch and click off. They'd watch the whole thing and then flame him. So you would get so many views on this video, but you'd have to be able to attack the flame. That's the thing. You'd have to be able to take the abuse, because like it would actually be insane. It would be fucking amazing. I can't lie. Also, I've got one quick thing to say, which is obviously fair play. The one thing Karmine Corps did turn up with was that fan base, that blue wall, who were at all the games, chanting, doing things. Well, here's the problem, right? Obviously, you'll know this, Monty. Now, everyone feels a bit sorry for them because, you know, they're coming with this passion, but the team's losing. But everyone remembers what it was like if you ever commented on a French player during Worlds, or if you commented on Karmine Corps when they were in the RL. Everyone knows how obnoxious those fans are. So you know what, guys? All in all, you're just another dick in that wall. That's all you are. That's all you are. It's just another dick in that wall. You're not in the team. Spoiler, it looks at you. It looks at you play mid lane. You play fucking Azir and Akali, guys. Like, the joke is, like,
might be able to do it
hasn't worked out. Because actually, you know the other thing I want to throw out there as well.
You went for that joke instead of the blue balls for the blue wall, because that's a good one too. You know.
Well, yeah, but the problem is now they've come, haven't they? But it's like a failed orgasm, isn't it? These last two games just don't really mean anything. So you got hype, but what is it? Just playing with yourself, you know. The other person wasn't even involved. Just selfish, onanism, the sin of Karmine Corps. Commit the sin of onanism. There's the headline of the episode of this Sunny Insight. If people don't remember, we used to actually do mad, before you used to get fucking demonetized for it. We had some mad edgy ones back in the, we had one that just, we had Froggen on. It's just called Thorin Does Not Recognize the Magna Carta, which is, that's actually banging up. I love that that's the headline still in history to that one. No, the other problem as well in their team is this, is like, does anyone actually... Oh, that was what I was going to say. I was going to say one thing that is weird, this though, Monty, is technically there are all these teams now that a bunch of them, like obviously BDS has like the whole French connection, but they don't seem to have the same like fan reaction, even though they're on top of the league. Karmine Corps at the bottom. Same as Mad Lions is like a mid-table team, but then Giants is a Spanish org. What I'm not getting really is are they just fans of those teams? Is it not like fan base? Because I was thinking it would be more like all Spanish teams, all French teams. Right. That's what's making people follow them.
And Ibai. It's Kamento and Ibai,
right.
You know, leading the cheering squads and everything like that, and having, I think, a lot of grassroots, you know, so it's those connections.
To be fair, it's the part where actually I will say people like you, me, and Dom sometimes do actually get lost in the sauce ourselves. We're actually taking it at face value, like these random fans are real fans of LEC and they're like, watch the game. No, half of them are just like a 12-year-old Zoomer idiot watching a giant streamer influencer guy who's going, hey guys, I am Ludwig / moist critical penguin fuckface guy who knows nothing. Hey, socialism, guys, socialism for the LCS, a walkout. Like that, I do forget that it is just it's essentially, by the way, Karmine Corps are essentially a bunch of fucking rats following the Pied Piper. My bad.
Yes.
My bad, Kometo. You're the Pied Piper in this particular case, mate. So fuck off into that little rock that led to the, I don't know, netherworld or whatever the fuck it was, you know.
By the way, and that was also part of the interesting thing that happened with LEC was because they fired those people. They couldn't use their in studio streaming setups this last week, so Kometo and Ibai couldn't be in the studio co-stream, or Kadril.
Damn it all to hell.
Which, like, you know, is hilarious because they just got, you know, record viewership in week 1 because they had all these co-streamers there. And then they just like, you can't come on site anymore. You know, it was really cool when you were sitting there and the stage was in the background and Kometo's like flipping out in French, but no, you just stay home, Kometo, this week. I mean, the degree to which they fumbled this is just extraordinary.
This is where I'm waiting for like a week to come up in LEC where it's a big grudge match, Monty. It is like French versus Spanish team. You know, there's all the fucking rivalry, and then a fight breaks out in the crowd, and it's going like it's one of those like it's almost like the Malice at the Palace when the Pacers and the Pistons played back in the day. It's just people just punching each other, and then someone turns like, "Get the security," and they were like, they were laid off 2 weeks ago. Like, oh shit, what the fuck? Luckily, though, the one good thing is this: when obviously the main fans of Karmine Corps go to throw the knockout blow, though, obviously they'll just load up, and then they won't quite be able to pull the trigger in tribute to Sakan. So there you go. That's the ultimate joke. So,
let's pull the punch. All right, I'm going to answer your question now about what you would do with this team, because we never actually got to that. I do think that Trimby, if he's willing to join this roster, is just a no-brainer move. Like, I don't I don't
I
understand.
believe Upset likes him as well, by the way. So I don't think there's even be any like problem there. I think they like each other, as far as I know.
Yeah, so I don't know about their personal relationships, but it just seems like a no-brainer. Like, it's crazy that this guy didn't end up on a team as it was. You know, I don't know if there's like personal problems or he has trouble dealing with his teammates or coaches or why he keeps getting dropped from like Rogue and then
As
this
far as
roster.
I know, from at least from what he said in my interview, it was implied that he got fucked by the thing where, because he was at Worlds, like all the other teams made the rosters without him, sort of. And then when he came to sort of find out it wasn't in Fnatic, it was like, oh, there aren't any spots available. That's what I heard. It was sort of like he lost the game of musical chairs, as it were, Monty.
Yeah, and you know, maybe Noah just insisted on having June and, you know, and Korean support to come in. Like, I don't know the reasoning. But you know, it is weird that he's kind of been dropped from 2 top teams where he was a major performer. So I do wonder if perhaps there are some attitude issues there. But regardless, like, I think you take a flyer on this because Targamas, we can't say like one okay Bard game is going to be enough to absolve him of his sins that he has committed. And at least with Zeka and Thorin, maybe there's a world where during this during this time between splits, you could get him some, you know, a sports psychologist or something that can help him because you have some time in order to do that and try and run it back if you believe that he's going to be, you know, a decent mid laner. And Cabashard's performance, while not great, has gotten better. And like, you certainly don't get rid of Bow and Upset. So I would say maybe you make one change. If you're me, you change out mid as well and maybe top. Now, I don't know who you get for mid, but like Finn is also just sitting there, and I'm pretty sure Finn is a better top laner, even though I have never been the biggest fan of Finn because I think he like he creates a ceiling for your team. Like, he's got his little weird Kled picks and like he's pretty good, but is he ever going to be like really good? The answer has been traditionally no. And I think that's why he has kind of bounced around from teams and like failed to stay on one, is because when you have Finn, it's just hard not to see the grass being greener. You know what I mean?
The biggest problem, though, Monty, is if you think about it, right? Let's say I gave you your dream. I'll give you all 3 changes. Are you ready? I am bringing in Trimby, Abadagi, and Finn. I've replaced all the problems. There's now no one French in the team, Monty. Like, this is why this nationalism approach, guys, is always limited, because the problem here is they actually are the players that can't be removed. I even think, by the way, I'm just going to say it right now, I think that's also part of why Born Upset are tanking all this fucking flame all the time, because the joke is those are the 2 best players in this team by far. Like, number 1 is probably Born, number 2 is Upset. Like, give me a break. Like, what are we here? If you're hating on those guys, like, you just actually are evil, because their teammates are fucking like inting the game away and doing nothing. What are you hating on them for?
Look, here's another idea. You know what I mean? Like, Leader is technically a free agent. Leader might work actually very well with Bo. Jizuke is still technically a free agent. I have no idea how much these guys are playing League of Legends right now. But if you want really aggressive players to kind of line up with Bo, like Leader and Jizuke, I think are very interesting thought experiments.
Also, remember, if you've got a scenario where the morale's not high in the team, Jizuke's laughter fucking cures cancer. It's fucking unbelievable, isn't it? That laugh is actually, mate, every time I hear it, it makes me perk up. It's actually brilliant. He's got such a great personality.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think they do have some options, but again, it's like, if you insist that this team must be French, I mean, you've already kind of sabotaged yourself in a way. So unless you've got some, you know, up and coming French talent that you think you can develop, which, you know, if Karmine Corps has the money and they have the popularity, then I assume that more French people, you know, young French people are going to play League of Legends as a result of this team and their popularity and their association with Kometo. And if that's the case, then perhaps on a long enough timeline, this will work.
All right, here's my inappropriate and rude joke about the Karmine Corp fans. But what's clever is by just making it about Karmine Corp fans and not saying a different demographic grouping, I avoid all the trouble. So the joke is, you know, in the story of Napoleon, the legendary emperor of France, who won all those battles. Sure. By the way, shout out. See, I really do give props. Spoiler, he was fighting against my people, in case you're unaware. So I'm actually giving him flowers there. Flowers for Napoleon. Basically, there's a famous thing, which is why they made that movie so focused on it, that obviously when he was in love with this Josephine woman, well, what's sad is, as they show in that movie, it's essentially the equivalent of getting your sexts leaked. Like, all the letters he wrote to her that were intimate letters, games sadly got like stolen and sold, as you talk about in that movie. And as a result, we can actually go and see, and they're a bit cringe, like all sects, by the way, because obviously you think it's not for a wide audience. It's the intimate person that you know, and they have all your little peccadillos. And so one of them famously that everyone used to laugh at is this one that goes something like, I'll be back in 3 days, don't wash. The joke is, a Karmine Corps fan hears that and goes, why would you? Anyway, because there's the one joke that no one has the balls on the broadcast to make, that if I was on LEC, I'll give you a little alternate universe, guys. Here's why LEC would be so different if I was on it, but it also wouldn't be LEC. Because if I was on the broadcast on day 1 of week 1, Monty, and they were doing that thing of like, wow, well, we've got the Mad Lions fans here with their contingent doing the drums, we've got the Karmine Corps blue wall, I would just look out when they did that crowd shot and do that line where I'd go, I bet it smells crazy out there. I'd just do that joke. That would be my joke, and I would be immediately fired. So there you go. Quick shot style. So. But that was, listen though, don't make any assumptions about nationality, guys. That was just about Karmine Corps fighters. It's not using like a legal defense. Yeah, it's good.
It's great.
I've established
it's
my
great.
presence.
It's great.
Nothing
it's
wrong
great.
with that. You're allowed to just like a group of fans. Never along national lines, guys. Never. I've learned that mistake. Believe it or not, Monty, there's another thing of a 10-year anniversary. We're also not that far from a certain anniversary in March from 2014. Also, Monty, if you remember that one, when I was locked in a hotel room.
I do. Never forget. Katowice.
Although, by the way, as an aside, I will tie this back into League. If people don't know, this is actually why in life I do believe everything negative can actually be a blessing if you like reinterpret it to go the right direction. Because I always tell people, I'm not joking, I probably never would have made this persona if I actually hadn't had that incident in Counter-Strike. Because what that made me realize was, I can't just be the most liked analyst who's just doing the normal meta approach. I have to sort of be unique. So my angle was, fuck it, if they're going to think I'm a villain and hate me anyway, I might as well play that angle up. I might as well just go fucking crazy with it. So it actually made me just like unleash the personality in some ways. It's like that joke you made where when I got fired from On Gamers, everyone else was like, oh, I'll have to get it together now. And you were like, actually, it's like they just fucking exorcised the demon from the On Game Church of On Gamers or whatever. Like joke was like, because that just made me worse. If anything, I became unleashed at that point in time. Like, yeah. I've never come back down to earth, some would say.
I mean, you and I were similar in that way. I differentiated myself in the same way on broadcast by being the one who was hyping up the Koreans that nobody wanted to win and being an elitist jerk, which I am in real life too. So, you know, it suits me. It suits me.
Which the craziest thing I'll never get over, Monty, is that after all the years you put in the trenches for Korea and T1, that even you caught all that flame after T1 Worlds because you had the audacity to like imply it was unexpected. Yeah. Like even you got the beatings. It's crazy, isn't it?
Meanwhile, it's just me in the fucking hype train hat with like the T1 logo on my head, and it's like, Monty hates Faker.
People, you're just a dick sucker. You're just fucking sucking all the dicks. And then the Korean fans like, you just hate us, Monty. Like, oh, fucking, I can't win. I can't fucking win. What's going on?
It's all the nephews who have no idea. They're like, Monty just hates Faker. I'm like, me? I'm the Faker hater out of everyone?
It's why, if you notice, the tweet you did that triggered them the most was the one saying that they obviously never watched him when he was at his peak. That one hurt them badly. That was like the fucking hidden dagger that stabs, the fucking most deeply. That got to them. I can tell that you got under the ribs with that one. You did.
They wouldn't be saying the shit that they did if they had seen those games or understood the context of those games.
Yes.
All right. I have an important question for you, Thorin.
Yes.
Is anyone who is not G2 going to win LEC Winter?
See, that's the problem. Is like the joke is, I actually feel like for G2 to not win, it would be like when Cloud9 didn't win summer last year in LCS. It's like, it's mainly on you. You know what I mean? It's not like the other team, like, just mad outplay. You had to help them. So no, that's the problem is this, Monty. The only way G2 doesn't win this split is for real if things happen like Caps has a shit game. I don't know. Mickey X does a weird champion pick that doesn't work. It's actually hard to even think of them losing the best of 5. That's the biggest problem, mate. Like, I'm trying to construct a way they lose 3 games. How did they do it? Like, I could see them losing a game or 2. They can throw a game easy. Like this game. And by the way, that's the main thing different about this team from last year. They definitely have like way more fucking. The floor is way lower, but I feel like the ceiling's still as high. They're the only ones that really jump out the gym. So. Bearing in mind, the only other team, like, here's the real problem you have right now, Monty, is if I had to actually say who has played the cleanest League of Legends, it is in this order: BDS and then SK. I can't pick either of those two teams to win the split.
Exactly.
Not to win the split. It's one thing to win, a game or two. Maybe they could come like top 4, yeah. To win the split, no. The thing is, this is why, unfortunately, if you wanted there to be a real rival, it needed to be like, I think Heretics obviously has the experience and the people who could hold up under pressure. If they'd have been way better, maybe Vitality, they've obviously had the massive problems. And then the joke is Karmine Corps was a team everyone hoped for. We all hoped Bo was like the best jungler in the LEC and he'd fucking go ham. So sadly, I think we've got another example like last year where the people who should have been the rivals just aren't playing up to par. And it's leaving G2 to probably feast on the mid-table, as it were. Because people are going to say Fnatic, but does anyone really believe Fnatic will win? You know what, Monty? I think you nailed this. You were the first one to pick this out last year. Everyone got way too hyped off the Noah guy from the first 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks, he was insane. And then after that, he's never looked as good ever again, mate. He's not bad. He's like if you had to rank ADCs in the LEC, he's probably in the middle. But that's all he is. People really hoped this was a new best ADC in the league. So my problem is I just don't think Fnatic has the ceiling to do it, mate. I actually think, fair play, they're a solid team, but I don't think they can win the league. I don't think they can.
I mean, I think the really damning fact is that when we look at the first couple of weeks and we look at Caps' performance, we might say, "Oh man, Caps is not, she's not looking so good right now." But then you look at his fucking Akali game versus Fnatic, and
turned it on.
And then sure, I mean, he didn't have to do a lot in the last game that they played against SK, but they're still running the AD LeBlanc. They're like Knight on BLG in this way that even after the nerfs, they're still willing to play it. And it gives them flexibility in the draft. And even if Caps wasn't on in the last game versus SK, I mean, the degree to which they brutalized Exakick and DOS in that bot lane with Yike just diving over and over and over and over again on the Lilia and Hans Sama and Mickey X just getting an absolutely massive lead on the Aphelios and the Renata Glask in the bot lane it was incredibly dominant game. And sure, the Fnatic game lasted a long time, but it was pretty in G2's control for most of that game. And it took a while to close, and there were some typical G2 whoopsies, but were they ever not going to win that game, past the, 15, 20-minute mark? The answer is
the joke is, no. Monty, if they still win that game after some of the things they attempted to do in that game, how can they lose? You know what I mean? Fnatic's a good team, guys. They should be a team that should be able to take advantage of this and beat you.
Yeah. And I think the upside for Fnatic that we're looking at is, this is the first time in a while that Humanoid has looked really good for any stretch of time in a regular season. Because
by the way, the meta is absolutely slapping his fucking cheeks. This is his dream meta, mate. It is.
I mean, his Corki's been really good. Yeah, his Corki's been really good. But if Humanoid playing this well, and Fnatic having Oscar and doing quite well, and June I think has been a pretty decent performer. I'm not gonna rave about their bot lane, but their bot lane is good enough. And if the top side of the map is doing as well as they're doing, they should be potentially contenders for the title. But you look at G2, here we go. We're gonna let the Jacks through, and of course we have these wacky counter picks like the Vladimir, which has been a Broken Blade staple. So they have these pocket picks and these pocket counters that come out and do a lot of work. So it's the flexibility of G2. It's the fact that Caps, looks like he's back on his game. So who exactly is going to take him out? Seems rough.
And also, if you even just look at the other talent, there's the other problem, Monty. We're just looking at the teams. If you start looking at players and asking who in a final can go head to head with Caps and beat him, who can go head to head with Hans Sama and beat him, with Broken Blade, that's also the problem, because it's lesser teams at the moment. The joke is, actually, I guess, of those teams, you would have to pick Fnatic. You have to hope a Humanoid pops off. You have to hope Oscar Dunn has an awesome finals. You have to hope that fucking Noah does well. Because if you look at the other teams, does anyone really believe that Nuke is going to be better than Caps? I'll give props to Nuke on this regard. One, I will say, if you watch the weather vane of Nuke, that's called Shio. Because that was the point. Shio looked way better. Magically, Nuke looks way better. I will say the thing with Nuke is this. I don't think he actually has a crazy ceiling, but I'll tell you what, his floor is pretty good. That's the thing that is actually kind of legit. The more I watch him, he doesn't fuck up the game and into the game, but he also isn't doing nothing like Sakan. He can sometimes be a passenger. If he gets the right champion, he can carry the games. I think in general, he has established himself. He's earned his spot, but is he going to win a final against Caps? That's the problem.
I mean, he's also riding that faker champion pool right now. You know what I mean? Is the way T1 is playing the game right now. And I'm not saying that
Wait,
this
fair
isn't the
play.
right.
His Nico got way better, the nuke one. Like, actually, he's doing some good ones now. Yeah,
His
got a lot better.
Ori, his Azir. But the thing is that if in this meta, if you are a team that's just going to first rotation, take your mid laner, and you're just going to play like Azir, Nico, Orianna. He hasn't played Corki, he's played Akali, but if he wants to play Corki, like these are champions where you can kind of just hold it down in the mid lane, and they're very strong right now and provide a lot of value in the mid and late game. My point is like you don't have to have a hugely wide effective champion pool right now. You can kind of play 4 or 5 champs only, as long as your team is willing to draft around that, which is what we see for T1, is they kind of just like get Faker his picks pretty quickly in the draft. And then he's been going crazy, and Faker's been doing really well in mid lane. Don't get me wrong, guys. There's a reason why their strategy is doing this, but you don't have to be the most stylistically deep mid lane player at the moment if you are quite good at these core picks. And I think there's no reason to believe that that's not going to be true for the rest of the winter split. So it's not like something I think they can, get away with, banning out, because the reason why you can't do it against T1 is, okay, so let's say you ban 3 of these and you first pick the other one. Well, all of a sudden you've left open Varus and Ashe and Rumble and all these champions that like are very, very dangerous to give to the rest of T1. So punishing Faker is not really an option, especially because you can kind of opt into the other side of the matchup, right? Yes. You can opt into Corki Azir. You can opt into Azir Orianna. You can actually
stabilize the draft by letting him have one of those picks, yeah.
Yeah, and you get one too. So it's like, who cares in the end, right? Like you're going to try and beat T1 in other ways. So that's kind of my take on the nuke champion.
Let me flip it on you then. After G2, who is the, like, obviously this is like, we are talking not just before, we're projecting the player. If it's not G2, who is the next best team for you?
I think it's Fnatic. I think it's Fnatic. Like you might look at their loss to Mad Lions this week, but I think Fnatic just has the highest ceiling of the teams that we've had, and trying to bet against them in like a best of 3 or a best of 5 seems like it'd be pretty tough. So,
because my problem, like I say, is I think like SK and BDS, the funny thing is the fact that it's BO3s is good for them. I think their problem is when you get the BO5s, and then Heretics, I'm just sort of like, I'm just going to be on Copium permanently about the top side till they lose. I don't give a fuck, guys. I can do, I like you. I can just pick people I like and ride with them until you fucks. So there's that. And then the obvious other one is SK, like I said, but I just don't believe in the best of 5s they can win us all. Like, not against the top teams. Like, they look good, but are they going to hold up for like 3 out of 5? That's the problem. This is one thing I actually do like about the format in general. I like the fact we get all these, we get BO1s, but then we get BO3s and we get BO5s. You get a flavor of how teams can play in all these different formats. It's cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Okay, so before we go ahead and switch to other regional talk, guys, we do have another sponsor this week, and thanks to Into the AM, they are back. Thorin's got a great shirt on. I've got a nice shirt on as well. They fit really nicely. We've had them with us previously. And fortunately for you guys who live in various locations all over the world, Into the AM does, in fact, ship pretty much everywhere. Like, they ship to South Korea, for example. They ship all over Europe. They ship to Australia. They ship to Canada. They ship to the UK. They ship to the EU. They make really high quality shirts and other forms of apparel. They have even like bomber jackets on there. If you don't like graphic tees, like the ones that Thorin and they have a ton of graphic tees, but if you're not into those, they also have like men's basics. So they have completely unbranded tees that I've really liked. They've got tank tops, they've got athletic shorts, they've got underwear. They have absolutely everything you could need to like kind of round out your basics wardrobe, and supporting them helps support us. So we do ask you that you use the link. Either use the link on the screen, type it into your web browser, or click the link below, because that's how we get credit for the stuff that you buy. So go to intotheam.com/LFN if you want to buy, to make sure we get that credit. And it's been great. So we've been really enjoying working with them. They provide very high quality stuff. I know a bunch of you guys ordered stuff the last time. So if you want to help us out too, leave a comment below and tell us if you enjoyed it, because that will be helpful, because I know a lot of you guys picked up some of the stuff from them. But yeah, I really like the fits of these t-shirts too. Like they shape the body nicely.
Yeah, two things is, one, they're not like clingy, but the way they fit is like way nicer. It's not just like a shirt that just goes over anything. And then also the other thing is the actual quality of the material is kind of shocking. Like I've already done a wash on this one. It still feels super, like, has that like lovely fucking like feel to it where it's like, it feels really soft. It's really nice actually. Because I always worry with t-shirts, obviously you wash them and then they come out all like fucking starchy, you know, but this is actually nice. It still feels great.
Yeah, they don't look like a box or anything like that either. Like you don't have like a lot of extra fabric in the back.
Yes.
Yeah. You can
and
see
by the way, they have loads. They have so many designs. Like, look, me and Monty are boomers, so we've gone with the more sort of aesthetic, like laid back, like just on the fucking, like mine's like some Japanese design, isn't it? His is like looks like the land of the rising sun or whatever. But like they also have ones that are like sort of like more fashionable or bit edgy designs and stuff. Yeah, they have a lot of different ones. There's a lot. There's a massive website.
Yep. So really good stuff. We hope to continue working with them for a long time. So go ahead and head on over, check it out, make an order. And I know a lot of you guys have been looking for ways that you can get cool stuff and support LFN if you've been living internationally. And this is an excellent way to do that because they ship everywhere. And they have a lot of free shipping too to a variety of countries. So just go and check out the shipping link on there. So good stuff. Do you want to talk about China a little bit? Because we've seen LPL start and BLG looks really good.
You know what, Monty? This is actually where I feel like people got too caught up in the fact that the initial story wasn't like BLG, but the initial story was they're not going to keep the JDG lineup. And it was such a bummer. I feel like it dominated the people's conception of the offseason. Because look, I agree. I wish I would give so much to see one more year of that team. It was so fucking fun to watch. But I'll tell you what, Monty, if I can't have it, this BLG lineup's about the next best thing, mate. I mean, Knight looks absolutely fucking bonkers in some of these games, mate. And then you just look at the team. Guys, the power level of these players is fucking insane. It's another team that could, like, play through all three lanes. It's just the strength is so... The junglers are stud again. Like, I think people low-key are... This is how you know people don't watch the LPL, Monty. I'm hyped on this team already. Like, this one's more... I'm more hyped on this one than Gen G, mate. I'm really hyped that this can be like a world's winner, I think. It's really possible.
Oh, yeah. They're certainly, like... I would say they're a top 3 team at the moment, and we could have a debate about whether it's Gen G, T1, or BLG who's on top at the moment. BLG is undefeated. They did take out Top Esports, which is important because it was the first match of the LPL, and we were kind of complaining a little bit about that last week. But as we've kind of seen a couple more games from BLG right now, it really does feel like they have some extremely powerful, synergy with the Jun and their bot lane, which are the players that stayed.
Yep.
And they can push advantages through the bot lane, win lane, and then get Jun on invades on like Brand jungle and just completely dominate the game. Like, if you want a treat, guys, go watch BLG versus Top Game 1. Watch Jun play Brand and see how quickly and efficiently and cleanly BLG can snowball, right? In fact, I was reviewing some VODs today on my stream of the Absolute Legends games that they played last night, and game 2 was another one of like stomp bot into just crush game, 10K gold lead at 20 minutes, just completely ruin the chances of the other team for Absolute Legends. And yeah, AL is not going to be a great roster.
Obviously, sure.
In the LPL. Even though Krako and Kyle over there, so some like mid-tier, I would say, Korean imports are on that roster. But I mean, BLG has just been smacking people around, and they look really good. I assume we're going to see Top Esports kind of bounce back. They've only been able to play one more match versus EDG.
By the way, I'll give you the narrative as well. You know how I got way ahead of this last year, Monty, where I said, like, the cool thing about this lineup is obviously like the money it's cost, but if they win every series, they'll be the best ever. Here's the cool angle that this team also has, guys. If this team wins Worlds, it is 100% Chinese.
Yep.
100%. And by the way, that just shows you how far the LPL has come. Because, mate, look, obviously I would still take Ruler over fucking Elk, Monty. That one's not really a hard one. But aside from that, these players are all, and by the way, including it, they're all bangers. Like, maybe Elk was a little bit overhyped because of like the fucking if you go back to like summer and spring last year, maybe it was a little bit overvalued, but he's still a very good player. And you just look, these are all LPL talents. So I actually think this team it's a really exciting prospect for me. I think it's going to be really cool. And obviously then there's no fucking there's no Korean player to go, yes, Mr. President Faker. I will follow my swords. You're on the other team, you twat. What are you doing? They're all Chinese now, so good. Let's bring the nationalism back. Let's start this Cold War. Let's do it.
No Tarzan and Kanavi to be double agents this year at Worlds.
What's weird is though, I actually tried telling the guy from Gen G that this was an all Chinese team, and you said no comment. A little joke for you all there, you know the industry. If people don't know, by the way, look, we won't make this a big thing, but I will point out, because that's actually a story we didn't talk about, Monty, is it's bigger than people know, because you have to add all the details to make the true Clown Fiesta. So as far as I know, this is what happened. There was some sort of a thing where Gen G was talking about like a promotional event or whatever on Twitter.
Yes.
And in doing they were
doing like a fan meet in Taiwan.
Yes. In doing so, they accidentally implied Taiwan's a sovereign country, which is literally verboten. It's not allowed. Obviously, if you're going to be working with China, right? China tends to get upset about that. But it's even better because people don't know the follow-up part, which is even funnier, which is in attempting to scramble Lena style and quickly fix it. They then said, thinking this was, because obviously this is what the Chinese would want to hear, they then used like the framing of something like, we respect China's like territorial prowess or whatever. But in doing so, they forgot something I've referenced on past episodes, which is that famously, Korea and Japan 24/7 put propaganda out about like all the other countries are trying to steal these little islands that are really ours, and they're ours for these reasons, and and they all do these things where they all claim these things. But in doing so, they didn't think about this Gen G by saying like we respect China's like territorial claims or whatever. You're actually inadvertently now saying to Korean fans that maybe China does own those. So even though guys, they thought this will put it to bed, that will put the fire out.
Taiwanese fans, but yes.
No, sorry, yes, but in doing so, you actually then made, but it was everyone was mad about this. You then made like the other side even madder. So you actually just managed to simultaneously get spit roasted from both sides and just lose in all regards. And then lastly, obviously this has a knock-on effect that now like LCK isn't shown in China. Like what an absent. That's one of the craziest. Even Targamas would watch that and go, that's a fucking int right there. That's so unnecessary. Like, yeah, even he knows and he doesn't talk.
Yeah, that was quite the fiesta that occurred, and making both the Taiwanese and Chinese people hate you at the same time was just masterful. Yeah. There are a bunch of LPL very big bangers coming up in the LPL this week, because the first week was a little light on some of the bangers, guys, but we're coming up on some really big games that we'll probably do quite a bit of discussion on next week, which is like NIP versus JDG. NIP is kind of a bunch of it's like Rookie and the remnants of OMG from last year, like Topside, Shanji, and Aki, along with Fodak and Zhou. And like NIP, I think, hasn't looked the best so far, but they're also 4-0. So the question is, how far can they go against some of the better rosters? We also have LNG Weibo this week. We have JDG LNG this week. We have BLG EDG this week. So there's going to be a lot of really kind of high-end clashes. RNG Weibo also this week between some of the better teams in the LPL. And I think that'll be quite exciting for people. So just be aware that it's big time LPL this next week as far as competition goes. And then after this week, I should say after part of the following week, both LCK and LPL go on hiatus for Lunar New Year. So get your high quality Asian League of Legends in while you can, because we're going to be going without for a while after that.
And if you know, especially the LPL, teams do sometimes semi-phone it in before that New Year celebration, and then they just go hard after it, basically. Like, you notice that seems to be the moment that people kick into gear. So I also wouldn't, like, overvalue some of the initial results. Like, people do sort of start a bit slow because it is an insane schedule if you play in the LPL. Like, here's the meme, Monty. Do you know that absolutely stupid thing that I posted on Twitter? So everyone's memed on the guy already. Where there's a writer for .esports called Scott Robertson, who writes about Counter-Strike and Valorant, apparently. And he actually posted, when in the Valorant circuit, something mental like that players were burned out by having to play like 30 matches in 6 months or something. And so obviously everyone's like, what the fuck is he talking about? He doesn't know what the LPL's like, mate. You play like 30 matches in like a month or something mentally. Like, it's insane. Like, it's crazy how many games they play. He doesn't even know what being burned out is if he thinks that's being burned out. Like, are you kidding me? Remember, just the fucking playoffs, you can play like 25 games or something if you're in all these 3-2 series. It's crazy how many games they play. They go to the absolute limit pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, BLG played 3 matches in a week this last week, and that's pretty normal. Like you're playing a couple matches a week, kind of minimum, and then obviously, like if you get into playoffs, the playoff runs can be exhaustive.
The way he just says that, though, like it's the NFL or something, like they had to play 17 games of grueling football on the gridiron in the frozen tundra. What are they? They're just humans. Do they not bleed? Like, it's a video game, you twat. I've played 6 games in a night, you fucking idiot. High out my mind. Like terrorist. I always said it. I always brag about it. I love it. It's all good.
It is super funny too, because it's not only like the 30 games over 6 months, Thorin, it's the fact that they also had like a 6-month off season where literally nothing happened in Valorant.
Oh, it's mad, isn't it? I know. Because if you don't know, by the way, guys, their one's even worse, where like if you don't qualify to their equivalent of Worlds, you're just done so early in the year. It's bonkers, mate. You're just killing for like months and months and months. By the way, as an aside, actually, we won't make this a whole thing, but I actually do think, I'm probably going to do a video on this soon, Monty. Classic Riot can fumble any bag. They can fumble any touch. They're the guys, Monty, like, that famous one from last season. You'll remember this, where the fucking Daniel Jones of the Giants or whatever, I think it was him, was he the one where he was doing like the rush and then he tripped over himself and didn't score the touchdown? Am I thinking of the right person here?
I don't recall
who it was. There was someone, but anyway, it was a Giants player. Was basically like odds on to just run in a touchdown. They tripped over, basically, they lost their footing and they just fell and they fucked it up, right? Riot Games is like that, because do you want to know what's crazy? I actually was going to do this video soon anyway, because I think a sleeper angle people don't know is there's actually one area that Riot has won the war against Counter-Strike, mate, with Valorant, which is that if you're in NA especially, all the young players play Valorant. They were all like the last few years, because they saw it as the new game you can break into, and they saw low-level people go to the top. Everyone was in on it, and they're about to fumble it. And the reason why is this, Monty, because they've done an LCS type approach with VCT and they've limited the top team. It means that like they've completely fucked sort of the challenger level, the second tier down, and that essentially everyone hates it and thinks it's shit. And it's actually even made some people consider coming back to it. They're about to fumble it. Guys, the one thing you had right now is you had the next generation. If you just made it so that essentially it's a really exciting game to come to instead of CSGO, CS2 now, I think actually you actually had like a generational tide going your way. But if you don't provide the circuit, they're going to come back. Because remember, if you go back the other way, there always are other tournaments in Counter-Strike. There always is like the open circuits, the one big strength we have. So as usual, Riot, think about this, guys, familiar refrain, Riot with their closed circuit, like limited approach is fucking their own game. Like these guys there's something special about how these guys can fuck up any advantage they have. It's insane. It actually is insane, mate. It's bonkers. They can blow any advantage.
Just lose any lead.
They're like Nisky. Any good move they make will be followed by the worst thing you've ever seen.
They're up with a massive lead, and then they just throw the whole game. Also, you're not mentioning the fact that the other thing is that a lot of these former CS players just literally prefer CS as a game, and they only did Valorant for purely cynical reasons to like make money. And who could blame them? Like, it sucked to be in tier 2 NACS where you weren't any money. Like some of those Sentinels guys got massive deals by going to Valorant. So absolutely no shade at them for getting the bag. But, if the bag goes away or they're just stuck, in the lower tiers, and eventually, by the way, I think somebody's going to try and make NACS teams again with the new game and the new circuit. So there'll be opportunities to get some money for sure. You want to talk about LCK a little bit?
Do it. So here's the sad thing, Monty. We can actually tie back, because I'm obviously good at callbacks and references. We can call back to last week. You know what, Monty? I apologize to you for my egregious statements about Hanwha Life. They are not a super tip. Fucking hell, bro. I secretly wanted this to be like a sleeper. Like, everyone's hitting on Thorin and Pino. Bruh, what is it with Viper? Remember, Monty, he is a world champion. He did win world championship and the LPL, but man, is his, like, the joke is he's second after LS of men in Korea who have the worst taste in other men to surround themselves with. I'll always use that joke, LS, because you're a mate of mine and also just trying to protect you, mate. Because, mate, how does Viper get trapped in these teams every time? Like, the guy is so fucking good, but every team just collapses. It just never gets going, does it? Oh,
I think what's super egregious about this whole situation, Thorin, is that, by the way, I had to suffer so much from people telling me after the World Championship in 2022 that, oh, Monty, Zeka is so fucking good. Zeka's so fucking good. He's so good. I can't believe he hard carried this team, Monty. You were wrong. Like, Zeka's not bad. He's not mid as fuck.
No.
I never said he was bad. I just said he was mid. He's not mid as fuck. He actually is secretly a god. And his glow up over worlds.
Once he's reading all these comments, it's like that scene from Interstellar where it's like breaking down, watching all the videos coming back from Earth. Because that's so egregious, Monty. How are these real opinions?
So I was told that his glow up was like permanent, right? That his glow up was going to be permanent. And not only did I have to watch, I don't know, all of last year.
So ironically, like watching that Super Bowl in 2007 and be like, you know what? I think Eli Manning's going to be the GOAT. It's like, you fucking idiot. It's a one-off. You fucking idiot.
Technically, he did win too. But yes, I get your point.
True. Even so, those are both one-offs in their own way.
It's true. But when we look at Zeka, I mean, the most egregious thing, Thorin, is like, okay, last year, you know, he was all right. He's still okay in his year. Like, all right, he's played some Yone. He still doesn't have a huge champion pool. But the most offensive thing right now.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. It's like he picked into the Azir.
No, it's not even that. He just won't play Akali. He has 0 Akali games in a meta of Akali where he has an Akali world skin.
My point was, Menti, of all the players ever, this fucker opted into the meta champions instead of like his Adam-esque only 2.5 champions he gets really good at. You're right. Everyone else in the world, even fucking Taken's playing Akali, but Zeka doesn't. It's your champion, bro. It's yours. Take it.
You have a skin. You have a skin in the game. Like, can we please do this?
Like, it's a joke. Just pick up your broken sword, Aragorn, and reclaim your kingdom. Like, it's your time, and he's too scared to.
Even Showmaker is out there playing Sylas and like dominating Gen G on it. You know what I mean? Like, why can't we play? Like, I understand Sylas is like a little bit more difficult sometimes to like fit in the current meta, but surely, especially when we've seen players play Akali into Corki and play Akali into Azir, these are Faker's champions. Why can't we play some fucking Akali? Yes. Why are we first picking Corki? Zeka, you are miserably bad at playing Corki. Like, so offensively fucking bad. I could not believe how terrible this guy's Corki was. He's never in the right position. He doesn't hit anything with Corki. He spends the entire game like actually getting his ass blasted in laning phase, like completely just gets shit on by Faker's Orianna. And look, Faker's Orianna laning is really good right now, so maybe ban it? I don't know. You banned it in game number 1. Why are we not banning it in game number 2? Like, he plays this champion as if it's like a flanking assassin. He's almost playing it as if he was Akali at times, but except when he has the package, because then he won't go in. It's like when you can use the package to go in, he won't go in, and then when he doesn't have the package, just on the flank. Like, what is happening?
If anyone saw a few years back on Netflix, there was that sci-fi show called Altered Carbon, which I think comes from like a manga or something weird like that. And basically, in this show, it was like a Blade Runner type world, Monty. But the whole premise was like your sort of consciousness was like in a chip kind thing that could go on your neck, and the idea was you could be resurrected if someone had that chip, and you got skinned into like a new body, and you could like your personality was in a different body basically, and you could get brought back. And one of the episodes, right, he gets captured, and a guy who's sort of like a psychic torturer, what he does is he sort of goes inside his mind to try and break him and sort of like get some information, right? I feel like I might actually just just be in some sort of a dystopian esports black site being tortured. Because think about this, Monty. I not only have to put up with all that shit about how T1 and Faker are the best ever, not JDG last year, but simultaneously, because no one does watch LCK, they're all still, like you say, telling me Zeka, a world champion, is fucking super sick still a year and a half later. Meanwhile, I watch LCK, and if anyone doesn't know, when they only watch Worlds and they tell me Chovy sucks, well, when you go back to LCK, he's literally the best player you've ever seen play ever in any fucking game. Again, he's just absolutely sick right out of the gate, but I'm being told Zeka's the fucking man. Like, this is like, they're trying to break me at this point in time, because the maddest thing is, Zeka didn't even do anything except that one Worlds, guys, literally. Like, if you just took that Worlds out and you aggregated all of his performances, he's like a mid or slightly above mid LCK mid laner.
Yes.
That's it. He was never the best, never for 1 second. There wasn't even a dream he was the best mid laner ever in LCK, ever. I know look, I'll give props. This is also why, though, I do think that format is scuffed to Worlds. Like, I can't believe this. The joke that this guy is a world champion, but Chovy isn't, is bonkers to me. Look, I can't deny his performance. He did do it, but it's just ridiculous to me.
And by the way, guys, just because we're talking about his entire career as him being mid does not discount the fact that he did play extremely well at that World Championship. Yeah. We never debated.
That was the biggest glow up I've ever seen, mate. For one turn, that was insane.
Good. In fact, even though Kingen was the MVP of the finals, Zeka was undoubtedly the MVP of Worlds. Like, just to be clear, I think Zeka was the MVP of Worlds 2022.
If you did it like the Conn Smythe and it's for the whole playoffs, he wins easily, of course.
Yeah. So I believe that, but I also did not believe at the time that there was any universe in which he would maintain this form, because what were the odds that out of all of the games that we had seen, he had suddenly like ascended to this new level? And there were problems even at Worlds, guys. At Worlds, his Azir was kind of bad. Like, you remember the Akali and Sylas games. You don't remember the Azir games where he was like at best, like okay. He kind of got okay by the end, and Azir was his most played champion in 2023. But he's not, when we talk about Azir players in Korea, do we ever talk about Zeka being the best? No, we talk about Faker. We talk about BDD. We talk about Chovy. You know what I mean? Zeka's not even in that fucking conversation. He's not in the conversation of the champions he does play. He's not in the conversation about Yone, which was his second most played champion last year. You know who's in the conversation about Yone? Chovy, Zeus. These are the guys we talk about with Yone. Who's in the conversation for Tristana? Fucking Chovy. We don't, the champions in which.
Probably the best Tristana ever. Just unbelievable, isn't he?
Like, he draws all the Trist bands. So I don't know. I just think that while HLE is good, they're a good team. When they play against the best in the world, it's hard not to see Zeka as a liability unless the meta just kind of shifts their way and they're willing to play it. Like, Dandy is the head coach of this team, and I don't understand how he can watch Zeka play Corki and be like, this is a stage-ready pick for us. How could that be true? And by the way, the rest of his team is actually really good. Viper looks fucking amazing right now. Like, he almost got them back in game number 1 of this series. Him and Peanut were really good in that game number 1.
He also never gives up, mate. He's got this crazy, he just stays in the fucking pocket even when the game's going to shit. It's amazing. This guy just tries so hard. It's amazing. It's really admirable.
His team fight positioning is unreal. His game sense is unreal. His mechanics are unreal. And you watch this guy just pull off the most amazing plays, but because they literally have a mid laner who doesn't know how to play his champion and doesn't know how to position with his champion, they can't get anything done against good teams. And this was the risk when we headed into this week for Hanwha Life, because their schedule was so fucking soft. The schedule was so fucking soft. And they did look good. They won all of their series 2-0 coming into this, but those wins were against FearX, DRX, and Kwangdong before Kwangdong made the shift to bullet AD carry, which made them look a lot better.
Yeah.
Kwangdong beat KT this week with the new AD carry, and I think that was a trap game for KT, and we just have to accept that this iteration of KT is going to have some really big ups and downs, and if you watch the telecom war, you will have seen
it was sad.
You would have seen Beryl just popping off in game number 1, and then Pioshik absolutely running it down in game number 2. So It was a schizophrenic experience.
Why do BDD and Deft, two of the most stable carries of all time, have to have? It's not even that you've just got one of them, Monty. You've got Beryl and Pureshik. So like that's like at that point in time, you flip a coin and it's just one of the mints. You just pick the one. Like, oh, it's Beryl today. Oh, it's actually Pureshik. Like, it's so sick, is it? It's so gross. And the worst thing about Beryl still is he really can just keep getting away with it, guys. Because when he has like the one game that's good, you sort of go, hey, he's actually pretty good.
His Alistair game was sick, man.
Even I think it, mate, and then I just get sucked in like, it's fucking Beryl again. He's back again.
He's actually had quite a few good games so far this split.
Sure,
he's had quite a few good ones, and especially that Alistair game was amazing. And Pureshik has had some really good games.
If you are perfect, welcome to the LCK. That's what happens when Zeus, by the way, is fully unleashed and just doesn't give a fuck, mate. Like, he just fucking welcomed you to the LCK right now. Like, he didn't give a fuck in those games.
Well, I mean, they also, Owner, like, basically sacrificed the lower side of the map and his own jungle path just to get Zeus on Rumble ahead. And they did lose that game when they really, went hard on Perfect. And I think, to Perfect's credit, he doesn't seem to get tilted, which I think is good as a rookie. So we've seen games where he's gotten like hard camped, his team still wins, and he bounces back and like does really well. Like his Gnar game that he had, he was bouncing back off a really tough Udyr game. And he finds ways to he knows his limits. Like when he is down, he actually plays in a way that makes sense for his position in the game. And he kind of like maximizes his positioning in a way that I find to be very interesting. Now, does that excuse him getting that far behind in the first place? He is being sacrificed. Like, let's be clear. He is left out to dry every single game. Like, KT does not care about what is happening in top side. He has been weak siding really hard. So
I think a prospect though, fair play. I can see why they give it a try.
He's definitely gotten kind of the short end of the stick in terms of attention, and he's had some good solo kills. He's had some bad solo kills against him. He looks like a rookie, but his mentality seems very stable, and he finds ways to be useful even when he's behind. And he wins games a lot of the time when he's behind. So he's also going up against Zeus, dude, and like, pick one, T1 fans. You guys have to pick one. Is Zeus like the best top laner in the world right now, or is Perfect dog shit? Because Perfect's a rookie. I think it makes sense that Zeus
there's a reason why I said it's the welcome to the LCK mode. It's not that he's shit. Actually, he actually has surprised me. I agree with you. It's actually, I was kind of bummed when I saw the roster doesn't have an established top lane. It's not bad. I can see why there was a prospect, but this was, like I can say, this is the reason it's the welcome to the LCK. Is like, this is what the top level's like, mate. You can not only are you playing potentially the best top laner, but as Monty says, on one game they even cynically just hard forced his lane the whole time while you're just absolutely hung out to dry, and essentially your team's just watching like, Jesus, I'm glad that's not me. It's like, we're in the same game, you fucking assholes.
Well, imagine being a rookie and like, you get kind of like 3 camp ganked on a Lee Sin and you like die to Rumble and you're like, oh shit, man, like I'm really screwed now. Meanwhile, Pureshik's like, hey, Deft and Beryl, this is going to come bot. Let's just start diving bot. And so everybody on your team's like, Deft and Beryl and Pureshik are like, no, bot's going great. Don't worry about it, Perfect. Like, we're going to hard carry out of this position. And to Deft's credit, he did. He had a great Callista game. But they were, they basically just sacrificed him to the Deft gods and won the game. So it just must be hard in that scenario just to completely just getting your ass kicked on stage in front of everybody in your first telecom war. Probably not super, moralizing, as it were.
By the way, I've said it a million times, but I'll say it again. Shout out to Deft, by the way, because the point I will always say, and it does get Faker fans mad, is Faker did like pivot his game and change what he's good at and what his skill set. Deft's mechanics, they are evergreen, guys. They are fucking evergreen. Go watch him play like a Callista or something. The guy is still just a fucking stud. It's just like his raw mechanical level is fucking. It might be one of the best ever in League of Legends, mate. It's so insane how good he is.
I think that's why he's in the conversation for like best ADC at this point in time, especially after winning Worlds. It's he definitely has proved his worth.
If you have to realize, guys, we were literally watching this fucking guy play like when Monty came to Korea, like 2012. Like
he was on MVP Blue. He was on MVP Blue. He was playing before Faker was, right?
That's why it's so nuts. He's still around all this time and like relevant, like a relevant player. It's bonkers.
His longevity has been top tier. But yeah, I mean, his mechanics have remained good. Even on a kind of bad D+ roster, he was doing a lot of work. He was one of the bright spots last year. And it is fun, I will say, because, Thorin, you may have had to trade Hanwha Life's downfall, but do we have D+'s glow up? That's going to be the next question. Because Showmaker has looked better.
I know. Exactly. There's two things about this that are really interesting to me. One is fair play to people like Wolf and the Korean scene who did point out that they didn't just like lose Canyon and then they're bozos. They actually had like essentially a stud waiting in the wings in Lucid who they wanted to give a go to. Like that one is actually a more of a good try than the perfect one. Like, I see why they did give him a go. But yes, the Showmaker angle, that's the craziest one because before the whole thing was Showmaker and Canyon. But bizarrely, when Showmaker's on his own, he looks like way better than he did I'd say the last year and a half, he looks way better, mate. Like,
he said he was burnt out last year. He said he was burnt out.
I mean, fair enough, but this really is like he just stepped out of a time machine 2 years ago.
Yeah, if you guys are wanting to see a Kassadin pentakill, well, go watch the Nongshim series they played last week. And if you want to see a fucking banging Silas game, they beat Gen G in game number 1, and they frankly nearly 2-0 Gen G. It was that game 2 was really ropey. And Gen G managed to pull it back and then close out in game 3, but it was definitely a chance for Gen G to lose. And if you haven't seen Lucid yet, Lucid is the truth, man. This guy is legitimately extremely good. And I think what's most impressive about him is that his team fighting with tanks like Rel and Sejuani is incredibly crisp. I have watched these team fights where all of his other teammates kind of grief him in these team fights, and he is still incredibly impactful and doing exactly the right thing. And if his teammates are more careful about playing around him, then he's going to be really, really good. So Lucid is definitely looking like between Perfect and Lucid, that's kind of two hyped rookies coming into what were kind of established good rosters with veterans. This split, he's looked excellent. Meanwhile, like Kingen, maybe not so great. By the way, Thanatos is just there. Is another top laner who's been very hyped up coming out of Korean challengers, and maybe that player will eventually get some time. But for now, like D+ is looking like a team that at least can contend with some of the better teams in the league, and the Gen G matchup was really quite fun to watch.
No, I mean, like I said, I totally now see why they were willing to give this guy a go in Canyon's spot. And they didn't just take, like, the joke is they didn't just recruit Pioshik and go, oh, well, at least he's a big name. No, this is like a perfect example of the rookie to try. This guy, it looks like he could be a stud.
Yeah. And Kingen hasn't been terrible. I don't think anybody on this team has been overly terrible, but I'm curious as to whether they still are going to have kind of the mid and late game macro play that plagued them last year, because that's why they put in Bible. And, I don't think that adding a different AD carry and aiming and then a rookie player and Kingen is necessarily going to solve the shot calling issues that they have. But maybe part of Showmaker's burnout was that he wasn't talking as much, or perhaps he couldn't lead the team with Canyon on it, or perhaps, Canyon and Showmaker were just, the synergy wasn't there anymore that they had cultivated for years. And so, yeah, it's nice to see, though. It's nice to see Showmaker actually have the big pop-off Showmaker games, because I've missed those. Like last year. We didn't get.
I'm also just always going to be an aiming stan. I just vibe with the guy, like his style. He's willing to go for it, mate.
He's good. Still maybe questionably playing Zeri at times, but.
Well, the good news is, Monty, now that he's not in KT, at some point in his career, he will now be permitted to win. So, dude, I made, you know what's mad, Monty? I just made a video last week, which was about the history of how cursed KT is. Because I was even able to bring in a bunch of details fans don't know that me and you know. For example, they even forget that mad one where back in the day, they recruited Mac Noon from fucking Najin and put him on the KTA, and then they didn't even qualify the champions, and they just immediately had to dissolve the squad. They actually had the craziest bad luck. But here's how insane it was, Monty. Even I, who made a 1 hour video where I go through all the bad luck they've had. There's a fan, and I actually pinned his comment, who even manages to come up with like a bunch of angles even I didn't get of like other things that were even more cursed. Like, for example, here's a fun one from the past. Obviously, when he was actually called Leopard, they had Duke before he became a stud and just wasted him and then just let him go. Then he went to Nudge himself. Like, mate, this was easily the more, like, when you go and look like I do, how many times, like in the regular season, they're like at the top, then they don't win LCK. How many times, like, they're a top 3 team guaranteed, but then they don't go to Worlds. Like, they get bodied in regionals, mate. It's crazy. And then the amount of times, like, they beat someone in the summer playoffs, that team then beats them in the regional. The amount of times they have like a top talent, but that talent never wins while he's there. He wins before or after. It's like, no joke. And then the final part I added in at the beginning that a fan won't even know, Monty, is if you know the history minus Flash of KT with yellow from fucking Brood War, and then T1 and Boxing Beat. It's so, this really is the most cursed fucking dog to ever come in esports. Like, it's like they've actually put in like a sort of like fucking like 18, 20 years of being cursed at this point. It's actually insane,
Flash,
man.
They didn't get Flash, maybe the best esports player of all time.
Like, they must have sold the whole soul of the org for that, Monty, because that's like the joke is that's how you also know Flash is God. He could overcome the KT curse. Like, he was like, I was there when the dark magic was written, witch. Do not speak to me of the curse. Like, no, he's like the only person who defied it is the joke.
Even they wasted like most of Score's career, so that he just was cursed almost never to win up until like the very bitter end. Meanwhile,
I mean, think how sick it is that Score then just fucks off to Gen G, just racking championships like on the shelf.
And now he doesn't have a job. What the fuck? How does Score, after being in 4 consecutive finals and then winning 3 of them, 2 of them as underdogs? How the fuck does this guy not have a coaching job right now? It's outrageous, actually, when you think about it.
Yes,
it's outrageous.
I agree. Must have just been blamed for Worlds, I'm guessing. That must be the assumption.
All right. So that's LCK. Do you care about LCS this week? Any brief LCS thoughts?
Only in a way. Like, for example, I actually do think one thing I'm going to be watching LCS for is I'm looking how might the Cloud9 team do internationally. Like, I actually think the players they have, give them a chance. I think they maybe can do something. And then the other obvious team is, like, my joke is, I've made this joke before, but I'll say it again. Obviously, FlyQuest is LCS Team Heretics. I just only care about the top side of the map. Bot side can do whatever they want. Just don't die too many times. Let my boys in top lane and mid fucking carry the game. Junglers, do your job. Go to the solo lanes. This is solo queue. Fuck ADC. So welcome to... Because, listen, I love me some Jensen. Love me some fucking Inspired, by the way. I actually think that guy is brilliant. I think he's a really special jungler. So, no, I think FlyQuest's a fun team to watch as well. Why aren't they? Who the fuck doesn't like that?
Did you enjoy their bot lane completely ruining the game? That they played against Energy at level 1 and forcing Inspired to go into their lane at level 2 to fix their boo-boo, and then they ended up not getting any CS and dying.
Ridiculous, wasn't it?
And like they fucked the entire game because then Inspired fell behind in the jungle and then they couldn't do anything. I mean, that was really egregious. You expect some of those games from some of that, but holy moly, that bot lane of FlyQuest really ruined the entire game. It's like, just sit back and get in the passenger seat, do exactly what Inspired tells you to do, and he will win you the game. Shut the fuck up and listen to Inspired. Do not take all in at level 1. Do not do that. If you're going to lose, just lose gracefully. Daddy Inspired will fix it for you. Do not do the thing where you make Inspired go bot at level 2 and lose the entire game from it.
Basically, if I was their coach, Monty, I would just be force-feeding them G2 2022 VODs, and I'd say, you are Flackhead and Targamas, welcome. See this? You're always going to be... And they're just setting up like that. It's like, and by the way, Inspired is Yankos, do whatever he says. There you go. That's how this team runs. I'm glad we got the protocols there, boys. You will never be the star. Your job is to be blamed and to let the top side carry. So there you go. Well done. Well, you're all doing your jobs. You all know your assignment.
And then there's Cloud9, who lost to Shopify Rebellion. And Shopify Rebellion is underrated, guys.
Sort of sneakily better than people think, right?
They are sneakily better than people think. And they're certainly weird, which is going to get them some wins. But this game, Thorin, was an incredible fiesta in draft from both sides.
It's insane. You actually think, pull up now, guys, as a fan, if you're watching live, pull up Gamepedia and just really quickly look at this draft, and you will think for real that like the pictures are bogged and they've got the wrong champions. You won't believe this was the real draft in this current world meta of 2024. It's insane, isn't it? Like, it's absolute bonkers, this draft.
It's not only that we got this draft, Thorin, it's that we got this draft in the order we got it in, which makes absolutely
Come on, hit me.
No fucking sense. Okay. And to kind of put this in, I did get some teasers. So Deacon says he has an interview coming out with both of the coaches where they talk about, like, apparently some mistakes happened in this draft, which was which was, I think, apparent.
Okay.
But also Insanity was in my stream when I was reviewing this match.
Okay.
And I was like, Insanity, how did this why did this draft happen in this order? And he's like, I cannot talk about it. So I think they actually inted their own draft.
I mean, by the way, I don't care what any meme
but
people bring up about season 8 fucking caps. What is this vein mid? What are you doing?
So let me.
What are you doing?
Let me explain why this is weird, guys. Okay, so you first pick Udyr. Okay, it's kind of whatever, right? Remember, they're on 14.2, so we've seen some nerfs to specific champions.
Yeah.
The Karma's banned because Karma with Malignance is very strong on this patch. All right, so we first pick Udyr. C9 responds by picking Aatrox Kalista. Now, Shopify Rebellion mysteriously takes Sion and Lilia as their B2 and B3, okay? Now, why this doesn't make any sense is because if you are trying to play Sion and Lilia, are you concerned that C9 is going to ban out these champions as we head into the second part of the draft? You're basically doing a tell that you're playing either Udyr or more likely Sion in the mid lane, and that you're using Lilia because you need an AP jungler to actually have a certain amount of AP damage on this roster. And so Brand was banned by C9. So my question here is, like, first off, why don't we just take Maokai? Second off, if you want Lilia, you know that their bot lane is Kalista, Renata, Glask. You end up picking Varus and Milio. You can literally pick Varus and Milio now and save your Sion Lilia for B4 and B5 of this draft. Not only that,
and throw them off so you don't give the tell of what you're going to pick the comp, right?
Of course. And not only that. So let's go deeper, guys. Okay, so you see Kalista, Renata, Glask, and Aatrox. You know that you want an AP jungler, right? They banned Brand conveniently for you. Now, if you are going to play Sion mid, what is Cloud9 going to play? Now, the answer to that question absolutely should be Tristana. It should be Kraken Slayer Tristana. However, they don't ban Tristana, which I find very weird. They ban Gwen and Vi. And then if you are going to force them into some sort of R5 AD mid matchup, once they realize that it's going to be probably Sion in the mid lane, then they need an AP jungler. So if you're going to pick Lilia, so first off, if you just pick Varus Milio, it can look like you're going an AP mid laner. You know what I mean? So they're not going to ban another AP jungler, most likely. So why don't you, as Shopify, instead of banning Vi, ban Maokai or ban Lilia and then take Maokai, right? Because at that point in time, I have to assume Cloud9's purpose in this draft was not to come in and take an AD mid laner. So they're going to need some sort of AP jungler with the Aatrox, Kalista, and Renata, Glask that they've already selected. So force them not to have an AP jungler, or maybe they play Kai'Sa, right? That has some mixed AP damage that might be able to deal with some of these tanks. But you just take the Varus Milio earlier, save your Sion Lilia / Sion Maokai for second rotation, and you don't give them Maokai, which gives them AP damage. And then, by the way, Cloud9 picking Vayne is just terrible. Like, in isolation, in the Sion matchup, it can be fine, but you are taking a TP-less Vayne who cannot split push at any point in the game. And let me remind you of the rest of your composition. Aatrox, Kalista, Renata, Glask, Maokai, Vayne. That is the lowest range composition that it's almost possible to make, because Kalista and Vayne have such low range. You also have no wave clear, so you can't actually stop any kind of sieges. And how do you kill with this low range? How do you actually kill anybody? In a front-to-back team fight, you're literally hopping around in front of Udyr, Sion, and Lilia if you engage on them with Maokai ult, they just use Milio cleanse and then it's gone. You can't deal enough damage to their front line because you're not going to get enough autos off before you're CC'd into oblivion by like Lilia Sleep, Chain of Corruption from Varus.
If you're the Vin, this is a nightmare fuel comp. Yeah, I know.
And by the way,
what are you doing in these fights?
I don't know if you guys know this, but Frozen Heart is really fucking strong right now. And Insanity literally just builds Frozen Heart first, and the Vayne is donezo.
Perfect.
The Vayne is donezo. And so why do we not play the very meta champion Tristana or Kai'Sa mid, both of which are more acceptable options here? It's like they picked the worst possible option. So that's what I mean when both of these drafts are kind of ridiculous, because Shopify tipped their hands so early that it should have been really easy to pick the right champion in R5. And then the other side of that is that why the fuck was Shopify taking these champions in the first round of the draft instead of saving them for after the second phase of bans? Why weren't they banning out the Maokai to basically force C9 into an all AD composition and then just build Frozen Heart and just like win the game? But I also think that because of the way this draft played out, Thorin, Shopify had such a huge draft advantage. I think it was very difficult / almost impossible for Cloud9 to win this game. Like, Shopify Rebellion is not so bad, and especially they are good at playing with weird champions. But this is just elementary. All you have to do for Shopify Rebellion...
People understand that the other emphasis part Monty's pointing out here, it's not even just the pure draft. Bro, Insanity does these things. It's not like this is we've never seen him do some crazy pick. Like, of all the players to not do this against in the order that they picked, like you said, I see what you mean now, actually. This looked bad even just on paper, but you're right. If you run back on like the order, they had about like 4 chances to get out of this, and they just intentionally put themselves into a corner and then try. Basically, like, Cloud9 would have had to be impossibly cracked to win this game. It'd be insane to win this one.
Like, imagine just trying to dodge all of the crowd control as like Kalista and Vayne at like 0 range. Or God forbid they actually like start sieging a turret and Varus is just shooting Qs into you and using range, and you have to like try and wave clear. Like, how does that even fucking work? I mean, this composition is just terrible from C9. It's just terrible. And you can't even activate the Vayne 1v1 because Vayne doesn't have TP. So you can't even play like split push Vayne. Not that that would be good, but it would be better than this. It would be better than not having split push Vayne, because then you definitely lose. So I don't know, man. Like this whole draft just seems so it was like a clown fiesta draft. Like, I don't know. I think it was crazy.
It was bad.
But also it provided me great entertainment of Shopify just like hard winning with a composition that worked really well into what Cloud9 decided to counter pick mid with for some reason. I do think it was just disrespectful and that they were trying to style on them, but both teams did not think all the scenarios through.
The only thing is, though, actually, the one aspect I was going to ask you about was this, Monty, is as much as we can like get in the middle of the table and you can pick apart teams, one thing I think has improved way more than last year is, even though it's not like people necessarily spent monster money to upgrade the rosters, dude, the actual parity of LCS feels way better now, though. Like, there aren't actually that many teams that are just all lost. Like, you watch a bunch of these, most of these BO1s are going to be competitive, I feel like.
Yeah, well, it's also the concentration of talent, and it could be even better if, like, Licorice was in here, for example, right? Or Revenge.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Players who kind of got ditched at the last second.
When someone brings them in for summer or something, someone does if they see that the team's good, they do the upgrade and you go for Worlds, hopefully someone does that.
Yeah, I think that, some of these teams may be looking at those angles. But at the very least, it does feel like it has some parity. I don't watch the games live, so I don't know how fast the broadcast is going. But from the comments I've seen, people are really enjoying the faster broadcast time and the fact that it's only 4 games a day. So it's like pretty quick in and out, especially with a lower amount of time between the matches. So it's less burdensome to watch, and the stage looks good. And it has been, I think, watching Cloud9 and FlyQuest and NRG is pretty entertaining. So those are the teams that I've been kind of keeping track of, and will continue to do so. A lot of people are hyped about Sniper, the new top laner for 100 Thieves. So I think there are some fun rookies that are coming in this time, and there are some legitimately fun players. Like, Sniper does have a weirder champion pool. Insanity is just a fun player to watch, even if he's not on a good team, because he does wacky stuff that makes it entertaining. And then you have the good teams, which do have their own styles and reasons to watch. So, I actually find LCS pretty watchable right now, even though I am not personally affected by the changes they made to speed up broadcast, because I just watch the games later. So it's always the same amount of time for me, no matter what. But weekend changes as well. I didn't check in on the viewership this last weekend. We talked about that after week 1, it not being great. But perhaps I think Cadrill's going to co-stream it now, or has been. I don't know. That should probably bring more European viewers into it, one would think. All right. Do you want to do some viewer questions to wrap up the show this week? We'll give you guys 20 minutes of viewer questions before we have to go. I am still extremely tired, as I will be for the next couple of months, because I don't get to sleep anymore. So I'm sorry we can't do as many viewer questions as usual. So we are going to take a quick break, guys, and then we will do some viewer questions.
Right, this is going to be the viewer questions segment of the show. Obviously, we did this so that not only can we field your questions, but it's a way you can support us and get something in exchange. So if you subscribe to our Discord, the Last V Nation Discord, you will have access to a channel where you can submit questions, and then we pass through the good ones. If we can, we do them all. Obviously, depends on time constraints. And at the moment, Monty's in Korea. It'd be different if he comes to America or something again in the future. We'll see. So, okay, obviously, Monty is sourcing them from the Discord. So what have we got?
Yes, it's also that Monty is very tired from not sleeping. That's the other issue. Smite, the third-person MOBA, is set to upgrade its engine to Unreal 5. Yes, this is true. And really, Smite 2. The skins won't be transferred due to time constraints. Yeah, there was something like they would have to remake them all, which would be crazy. They can't just port them over. But players will be granted currency to use in Smite 2 content. Yeah, so if you bought skins, they're giving you I think it's like 50% of currency. I don't know, some percentage. The amount received depends on how much money they spent in Smite. Is this something we can one day expect for League? And do you think it would be a positive change? I mean, the skins solution. Okay, so here's what I think about this for League. I don't think they would do this for League of Legends, because I don't think Riot would upgrade the engine without being able to port the skins. Also, Riot has a lot more money than Hi-Rez. They're a much bigger studio. And so I think they would have a lot more resources. Now, granted, they probably also, I won't say this. I have no idea how many skins Smite has. It is I think it is probable that with 160 champions, Riot being a richer company and a bigger game, that it is likely that Riot League has more skins, but I don't know enough about Smite to say that is true. But even if League has a lot more skins, I just don't think that they would do that. And by the way, in Counter-Strike, nobody lost their skins going from CSGO to CS2, right? So,
well, in theory, I mean, look, they have had some problems initially with like what they look like. Maybe some of them didn't like translate the graphics, and there's some problems with the filters. But yeah, in theory, the whole premise of why they made it sort of like a smooth transition is people probably would have lost their shit if they've had to lose like 30k worth of skins. In fact, as a random aside, if people don't know, this was a piece of news that was in the last weeks. The Brazilian football player who plays for Arsenal called Gabriel Jesus, who's like the fucking striker. Obviously, all those guys played CS when they were young, and he actually got his account VAC banned, and he was actually doing a tweet like at Counter-Strike, please unban me, because like everybody had like 30k worth of skins or something. So his shit just got banned. If you get VAC banned, you lose it all. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, look, I would think that would be a fine solution for me, but I'm a person who cares. First off, I haven't spent very much money on skins or on League of Legends in my entire life. But secondly, it's like, look, I have a Black Alistair skin because I was there at the beginning of League of Legends. I don't care if I don't have my Black Alistair skin anymore, guys. I really don't. I would rather just have an upgraded engine with a game that fucking works so that I can take more enjoyment out of the professional scene. To me, that would be worth 1,000 Black Alistair skins. Let's just put it that way. Thorin question. Choose between Monty's old Fabio-ass long hair or the standard Korean gamer bowl cut for the rest of your life.
I mean, the thing with that is that's easy, isn't it? Like, at least yours had like an aesthetic and like
it was good.
Like,
I have nice hair when it's long.
Problem with that bowl cut one is it just looks bad on everyone, doesn't it? Like, there's not anyone that looks cool on, is there? There's no one.
Yeah, and
look, like, the joke is if you had have been in a metal band, that would be a cool aesthetic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, my hair is very nice when it's long, guys. It's very nice. Nobody looks good at a bowl cut. There are no nice bowl cuts. What are 3 movies that you would force your Zoomer family member to watch in order to cleanse their brain and make them into reasonable members of society?
Oh, okay. So we're actually trying to sort of like deprogram them or something. We're trying to like make them be biased to our view of the world. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. I mean, it feels like an obvious one right out the gate is Gladiator.
That's a good.
Isn't that one of the great? Like, it's essentially a great movie about like integrity and fucking, fighting against what's wrong and so that's a great one right there and very palatable movie, right? Wouldn't like they'd be bored by it.
I think I would just force them to watch one of those like really old 60s epics like Lawrence of Arabia just because they have no attention span.
Oh, I see what you mean. Right.
Right? Because you want one of those like 3-4 hour long, like give me a Lawrence of Arabia or like 7 Samurai. Just to prove to them that they can actually like watch a movie without looking at their phone every 10 seconds.
The Great Escape or something, any movie that's like 2.5 or 3 hours long, basically. And it's good, but you have to like dial in and you got to keep focused. Yeah, sure. True.
Those are good ones.
Let me think what else would be good.
I think you have to pick one that is very open to interpretation too, like 2001: A Space Odyssey. So that they actually have to use their brains when they're watching it to attempt to draw their own conclusions.
Yeah, another thing I would say, I see why you pick that, is I would also pick films that are a little bit challenging, since he's saying like we're trying to sort of snap them out of their Zoomer fucking haze, as it were. So yeah, you'd pick like another example of a film is you'd pick something that maybe has some like dream logic in it, like I don't know, fucking like Lost Highway by David Lynch or something, like one that's a bit palatable, but you have to sort of you can't watch it and be like, who's that? Why did you do
Mulholland Drive?
Point is, you're never going to get the answer. You're supposed to just watch it and go along for the ride. Don't worry about the plot and all that. Just absorb it and see what the effect is.
Yeah. 2001 Mulholland Drive. Those two are pretty good ones, I think.
How would
the top teams in NA and LEC do in the LCK and LPL? Would they be competitive to make Worlds? No. And what would be the reverse of that be? Where would the worst team in LCK and LPL compete in NA/EU? Would they be able to make top 3 for Worlds? Also, no. The
problem with that is though you're cheating because the LPL has so many teams. Of course, the bad teams are really bad. We have a bazillion teams, so that one I feel like it's a bit unfair. In fact, I've even realised I actually did just say a stupid thing earlier, Monty. Yeah, no shit. When you take 2 teams out the league, it's almost like the average aggregate level of the league's better. Yeah, no shit, because there's not 2 permanent bottom feeders, are there? Actually, now I think about it, they should essentially the joke is the bottom teams would be just outside playoffs. So yeah, no shit. No, these teams that do badly, put it this way, if you took the worst LCK team and put them into LEC, they'd also lose a bunch of these games and lose to fucking people like Fnatic and Vitality. And so, yeah, they'd lose some games for sure.
Yeah, look, Brion's bad, guys. They would lose to a bunch of LEC and LCS teams. They're really bad. The reverse of that, though, is also kind of interesting and true, which is would the top teams do well? The thing is that if you put G2 in Korea for 2 years and they could actually just consistently practice against Korean teams, I do think they could be a very good team on the world stage. The problem is just their quality of practice. It's not like the quality of players is bad. The quality of players is very good. Cloud9.
I could see a world where if they played there and it wasn't just a one-off, they live there now, it's just their whole lives, they're practicing every day. G2 could be the 3rd best team in LCK or 4th best team. I don't think it's inconceivable.
Yeah, I totally believe that.
Especially with their coaches and their staff. Yeah, I believe it.
You're not going to look at this version of Hanwha Life, which is supposed to be a top 3 team, and tell me that G2 couldn't beat them on a good day, or if they were having this. Yeah,
they could get all these teams. Yeah,
but they would have to live there. That's the thing. Do I think they could do it if they just lived in Europe and in a theoretical universe flew in every day and only had European practice? But if they had the same practice, I think it's possible. This iteration of Cloud9 could also potentially be very good. We've seen most of those players on Cloud9 outside of Fudge have good international performances, and they have talent.
Sure.
I'm planning a trip to South Korea near Camp Humphreys, south of Seoul. That is the U.S. military base, for you guys who don't know, in late July this year. Being that you have both spent a lot of time in Korea and both even lived there for periods of time, what big tourist attractions should I visit and where should I avoid?
This is definitely a Monty question, because I'm actually famous that I am the person who can go to Paris and I would never even think to go to the Eiffel Tower. Why the fuck would I? I'd just do my own shit. So like, I think the only one I've even been to in Korea is just the Hanbok Village. That's it. Like, I actually haven't been to I haven't even been to that tower. I haven't gone to any of that shit. I did go to that one. I went to that village one is quite cool. It just is like, essentially, the analogy would be, it's almost like the Renaissance fair approach in America. Like, you sort of get into the character of, like, you're in ancient times in Korea and you get to see the vibe of what it would be like in, I don't know, the 16th century or something mad like.
Yeah, there's a bunch of fun stuff to do in Central Seoul. So Gyeongbokgung is the main palace. So if you're interested in history, that's very interesting. The Korean War Museum is great. You should definitely go check that out. A bunch of good stuff in English. If you go to Gyeongbokgung, the old Korean palace, you should get the English audio guide. It's very good. Insadong, which is kind of like the more old-timey part of Seoul. That's very cool to walk around in. The artificial river in the center Seoul is very cool to walk around in. It's July, so it's going to be fucking hot. So that's kind of miserable for you. Maybe you go up to Namsan Tower, which
it's going to be humid as fuck, by the way.
It's going to be miserable.
It's going to be humid as fuck.
You will not have a good time.
Crazy.
If you have to be in, I don't know if you have to stay in Seoul, but if you can go out to the west, go to Soraksan, which is like a national park in the mountains. The east rather, on the east side. But it's several hours bus ride out. So we'll go to Busan. Very nice beaches and stuff down there. Be less hot. So there are some things you can do. Have either of you read Percy Jackson and the Olympians? And if so, your opinion?
It's not even a real question.
No,
I haven't read fucking Harry Potter. Of course, I haven't read Percy Jackson. You fucking guy. How dare you even ask me that question? You know how many books there are in the world? Like, I'm going to die without having read loads of classics. I'm not reading fucking Percy Jackson.
Yeah, we're too old.
Have you ever read
it? No, I was too old for that one. Any interest in watching the recently released?
Listen, guys, you got your wires crossed. That's a Hotline League question. Just save that, tank it, and then ask Travis. He'll definitely have fucking read it. He probably thinks it's great. I don't know.
Is there any interest in watching the recently released TV series on Disney Plus for Nerd Legion? Yes, we probably will watch that. By the way,
what is curious. It he's referring to? What, Percy Jackson has a show now.
Disney Plus.
Okay.
I am curious just because I'm interested in mythology and I am intrigued at how they used it in a young adult fashion. I'm not going to spend all the time reading the books. I will try the TV show most likely. Embiid in the NBA won't be playing versus the Nuggets, and he hasn't for the past few years. And some speculate it's because he doesn't want to hurt his MVP chances by going up against the reigning champions and Jokic. What's your thoughts on somebody dodging games like this to try and maintain MVP by not losing or winning? Well, as I understand it, he's almost like disqualified from being MVP this year because of the number of games he's missed already.
Missing actually probably does fuck him for the MVP because you have to play a certain amount of games to get it, because obviously people load manage now, so it's a way to encourage you to still play. So first of all, I think he's probably, if you look how many years left, probably going to miss the games anyway and probably maybe not get the MVP. But I do think if you look at it, here's the problem, Monty. If this was just 1 year, I'd agree with the thing of like, give him a break. You can't know why he missed it. But if you go back, it's something bonkers, Monty. Like, I think that the last time he played like an away game in Denver is years and years ago at this point in time. Like, no joke, it looks like he is actually literally dodging the matchup because he is. If people don't know, like, his main rival is Jokic, and they're both like centers, although they have a very different game. And so when you go head to head, almost everyone looks bad against Jokic. So I actually do think on some fucked up level, it is like he's trying to like limit how bad he looks by just avoiding his big matchup in the regular season. It looks like that.
Also,
cynical.
Just as an aside, playing in Denver is extremely difficult also, so he's probably not even going to be playing his best game because
especially
of the altitude.
And think about like the fucking strain that was put on your body, yeah.
I mean, there is an insane advantage, especially in sports like basketball, where you're on the court for extended periods of time because of the cardio advantage that Denver, being in Denver gives you. It gives the Denver teams that advantage on the road too, because they just, their blood oxygenates better. So when they're at sea level, like, they can actually do more cardio at the same time. But it really hurts when, the other team is coming up to mile high. And that has been a traditional advantage of professional sports teams in Denver for a long time. It actually, Thorin, I don't know if you know about this. I'm trying to remember his name. Maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, there was a corner for the Steelers who I believe had sickle cell anemia, which is a very common, common condition. Well, not common, is more common, I should say, much more common in people of African descent.
It's more of a predisposition genetically, yes.
And because
like famously, if people don't know, I think it's the Maasai tribe or something in Africa famously have it, and it actually aids them because it helps against malaria was the famous thing, right?
Yeah, something like that. But the thing is that he couldn't actually ever play in Denver because there was a chance that he could like get very seriously sick because of the sickle cell anemia.
Because his blood's like not oxygenated or something.
Right.
Up, I'm guessing.
So like it was like a big advantage whenever the Steelers would play in Denver because he was. I'm trying to remember his name. He was a really good corner. And he could never. Yeah, he could never actually play in Denver. And that was at a time when like the Steelers and the Broncos were both very good teams in the AFC.
Ryan Clark, the one who's on TV, Monty. He's actually an analyst on TV now. I think it's him. I think that's who they mean.
Yeah. That's it.
Oh, it's safety apparently. It says he wouldn't play in the playoff game.
I knew he was in the secondary
for that reason. Yeah, because he has sickle cell. So it said he'd have low oxygen conditions if he played. That's crazy because if you play for the fucking Steelers, mate, you're not going to skip a playoff game for no reason. You can win the fucking championships. The Steelers. That's big. Yeah, that's big.
So lots of interesting things about playing in Denver. First generation Frankfurt School philosophers Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer argued in 1944 that with the onset of mass media, art was losing its ability to provoke intellectual engagement and mass media was usurping art's function with brain-numbing entertainment. As an example, they write about movies where we see a hero fight corruption just enough so that we get the idea of it and get off on it, but never act on it. Mass media waters down thought by necessity of the idea being digestible to the masses. Profound ideas are then slightly pulled out of the unconscious, but not provoked enough to the point that we act on it. We then go back to our dry 9-to-5s and live our alienated, mediocre lives. It is not a conspiracy theory, but an argument that the medium of mass media has produced an intellectually dormant society. Thoughts on this argument?
I mean, I agree. Essentially, like mass media is a sort of opium of the masses. Like it sedates people. Because I've always said one of the main things that is one of the reasons I even think, I'll give you a fun angle here, Monty. One of the reasons I actually think they allow certain types of conspiracy thinking and theories and critique into the mainstream is exactly what he's describing. It's to be a pressure release valve and to make you feel like, oh my God, we're talking about what we're not allowed to. And this is a really important topic. But at the end of the day, you and the hosts are just wasting your time not doing anything tangible that would help those problems. You're just talking about it. It's all meta. It's an infotainment, as they say. Like you are just being entertained at the end of the day. You're just choosing, in this case, to sort of enter an X-Files world of like paranoia and oh my God. But at the end of the day, you still just go to bed at the end of the day. You didn't do anything. You wasted 3 hours on a stream. And also the people doing the show just collect their donations, go, oh, bloody hell. And then it's on to next week. It never ends, does it? So, and by the way, what he said about movies, I definitely fuck with. I do think that is why, in fact, you notice I've made this point many times on Foreplay. I do think that there are some very insidious trends in how Hollywood does certain hero stories. So, for example, if they ever do the hero against corruption, well, first of all, like he says, you get to be the insert for the protagonist and feel like you're battling corruption even though you were just watching a movie. That's why every idiot did say, Monty, in Nazi Germany, I'd have been the guy who didn't salute. And then they take a breath. Well, I guess we've got to work with Saudi Arabia in the end of like in video games. Like, so already we know it does make you think certain ideas about life that you wouldn't enact in real life. And then lastly, I've always pointed this out. The message in every great film noir, heist movie, cop movie is like the only way that the good guy ever wins is to some degree, but not on a macro scale. You can never beat like the institutional power or the mob. You can just stop this one mobster or this one corrupt person. And the message usually is, and that's a movie. So if you tried it in real life, you'd just get killed in the first scene. So you do sort of watch it and go, wow, I feel like heroic and I'm getting the vibe. But then, obviously real life, I shouldn't do that. That would be for me. So I sort of see what he means. I actually think there's something to sort of the premise that's being presented. Yeah.
I do think though that I don't think that it started with mass media because I think the idea of using entertainment, especially low forms of entertainment to placate and distract the masses. I mean, look at what the fucking Colosseum was built for in Rome. Like they had bread and circuses for a fucking reason, guys.
True.
And you know, that was the mass entertainment of the time, but it was very much intended to distract the lower classes from uprising. This is a topic. This is something that has been around in society ever since there were mass like massive cities. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't really exist in tribal societies because it didn't have to exist. But when you start to reach a certain scale of human civilization, like, you do actually have to have ways to distract most people from what's going on, because the threat of the many against the few is just constant. It's constant, right?
Oh,
it's the same thing you see in massive organized religious structures, right? Like,
That's the premise of the movie Ants. If anyone's seen that, there you go. There's a teaching tool for you all. The grasshoppers and the ants.
But you know, it's like a lot of religions. You know, the mystic aspects of that religion is hidden because that's not the main message for the plebs. The main message for the plebs is something that is much more dumbed down. And this goes back to Greek religions. Like, there were the Eleusinian mysteries and like cults and stuff that you had to be kind of invited into, initiated into, to learn the deeper secrets of the religion, because they were probably, dangerous and not necessarily for public consumption. They were ideas that you had to kind of prove yourself worthy of, right? So I do think that's the point is true, but I don't think we could point at mass media. I don't know if this is even their point. This is just my take on it. I wouldn't say that mass media is like the start of this. I mean, this started thousands of years ago. Thousands.
I mean, I'll give you one last other angle, which is you can see the way that they do this in like a creeping tiptoe approach, where clearly someone is reverse engineering a macro effect, Monty, because another one would be when he talks there about art, and especially if you're talking about anything in the 20th century, you have to remember that like the common man didn't access art. Like, when you read all those great texts and philosophical things and hear about like painters, a random pleb didn't get to access those. Like, that was in like some fucking stately home in France or in England, or that was like the person even watching the play was, unless it came to certain Shakespeare periods, was himself an upper class person in a box. And like, they were already people who were sort of above the masses. So what I would say is we're also talking about like mass marketed mainstream stuff here. Obviously this stuff is to placate you. Like, I'll give you another example. I heard a very interesting story, because the problem is, when there wasn't television, people used to go after work to the pub. They go to the public house. And when there wasn't television, a lot of people don't know this, there wasn't music either. There wasn't a jukebox. So what you used to do for real was drink beer and just talk with people who live in your area, like your neighbor, the guy you work with. And in doing so, by the way, as obviously the history of Germany will show, you can foment potentially dangerous political like movements out of this. I'm thinking about people get together, have a few drinks. Hey, we should do something about this. In fact, you know what? Fuck it. Let's go down there now. And so to stop that, they did things like introduce the jukebox. So if you go into a pub now, people aren't talking because it's permanent music and rock and roll and the classic songs, and then everyone's just drunk now and there's not even the social element. And like, they're very, what I'll say is this: I'm not one of those people who does that thing of like, wow, all the people in control are just incompetent idiots. It's the opposite. I actually marvel at how shrewd they are with their social engineering. Like, they do seem, even if they trip up in certain areas, the end goal tends to work out. Like, they do subdue you, they do distract you, they do get you to buy into silly nonsense. Or the joke is, like, in the modern day, the kind of person who might have been a political revolutionary, he can't get into that right now, Monty, because he's really waiting for season 2 of a show on Netflix. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it worked. What they did worked. Well done.
And if you're entertained, it's easier to think that you have a good life because you're not unhappy in the traditional sense.
Like, vicarious life,
yeah. This is why, even like games like World of Warcraft that people dump years of their lives into to be top players and like live in a fantasy realm. It feels like you're being a hero, but instead of spending the energy to be a hero in real life, you're spending your energy in this game instead. And you just have to realize that I'm not saying it's wrong to do this, but you just have to realize it for what it is. And also, a lot of these things start as not being insidious, like human stories. So, for example, do you think Jesus Christ, when he was doing all of his teaching back when Jesus Christ was alive, do you think he wanted the Catholic Church to exist in its current form? Do you think Jesus was like, yeah, this is the end goal of my teaching? No, because in fact, the Catholic Church actively took Gnostic Gospels and said they were not a part of the Bible, as in the really wacky stuff. Like, we have copies of this right now. Go read the Gospel of Judas. Go read the Gospel of Thomas. They are very different from the 4 Gospels that the Catholic Church, hundreds of years after Jesus' death, decided to say was the Bible. That was not Jesus. Jesus wasn't like, this is the Bible. He lived his life. Some people wrote it down. And then later on, the Catholic Church was like, you know, these parts are less dangerous to our system of control. And then they made that the Bible. And you know what's weird to me, Thorin, is that even though the Catholic Church made the Bible, nobody, even after we have these other texts and we're post-Reformation, has been like, maybe we should make a new Bible with, like, I don't know, all the information that we have now. Very strange to me that that's never happened.
I'll give credit to Catholic Church. They did do a pretty good job putting people off doing that by, checks notes, burning them alive, flaying them and stuff,
for thousands of years.
It's a pretty good job sort of like putting us off doing that, but I agree. And also, if people don't know, the joke is if you actually had to summarize the main theme that they clearly suppressed in the books that they didn't include, that Monty referenced, the Apocrypha, it would be that it's the stuff that sort of tells you stuff that would go against institutionalized Christianity, like the idea you need a church or a pope or someone to intercede with God. Essentially, it's all the shit sort of like you don't need, it's all in you. You don't need anything. Yeah.
Even more insidious, Thorin, and this is like Elaine Pagels' theory, who's a very famous religious scholar from Princeton. Her theory is that they suppressed Gnosticism and the Gnostic Gospels because they say very specifically that Jesus Christ can metaphorically resurrect inside you. And the Catholic Church, when they made the Bible, picked only the Gospels where he literally resurrects in the flesh. So they could say, because otherwise the Catholic Church just has to spend all of eternity like stamping out possible other prophets and messiahs. And everybody's like, I'm Jesus now. No, I'm Jesus. Like that Spartacus moment. It's like, Jesus Christ resurrected in my vision. So they actually her theory is that they could not have a universe, like a world where Jesus Christ could actually resurrect within somebody's soul.
Yeah, you're making it like the lineage of where people become enlightened beings in Buddhism and they become another bodhisattva. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is much more similar to that. But also like the Gospel of Thomas reads like Zen koans. Like anyway, that's a very long way of saying that. But effectively, my point of that is when we talk about mass media messaging is that these things are controlled by powers, and they are controlled by powers for various reasons, and they are often dumbed down because the Gnostic Gospels are way more interesting than the Gospels you're reading in the Bible. Way more interesting. All right, we'll do one more question. Pretend that Riot put all starting major region players in a giant over-the-top rope battle royale. Assuming they're not stupid and team up to eliminate Bin first. Who do you think would win and why?
The joke here obviously is like most of the Asian players aside from Bin look like they'd snap like a twig, don't they? So it's actually going to be hard. Like for the joke is Chovy definitely wouldn't win this, would he? Look at him.
Unless they found very clever ways to like set traps. So if it's like the Japanese film, the original one, Battle Royale, with like all the high school students, which is a banger movie, by the way.
No, I assume he means like a Royal Rumble type thing in the wrestling or what?
No, it says like Battle Royale. No, it's like the high school movie, the Japanese high school movie, where they're all just like put in a... We'll make up our own rules, Thorin, with blackjack and hookers. So if they existed in the Japanese original form of Battle Royale, where it was all those high school kids that were like put in an abandoned city and had to kill each other, still there was just one, who would win?
Well, in that case, if it's actually got like a strategic element, I will give credit to Faker. He might win. I think he'd be good at mind games or like fucking tricking people, alliances, Surely he'd be good at all that shit.
I think Faker probably has a pretty strong shot.
Obviously, the joke would be chucking Lehens and Beryl because they have some sort of spell they've placed over every other Korean. That doesn't affect me because I'm not Korean, apparently. Like, but somehow they've just entranced everyone in their region. I don't know why. Yeah, there you go. Obviously, the joke is no matter how well he did, Viper would never win, though, would he? So there you go.
I guess it says over the top rope battle royale. So maybe it is like a WWE one. So in terms of physical, I don't even know because like I see these players. As far as Korean players historically, Prey is huge, by the way. That guy could definitely. That guy is massive.
Think of some of the people. Wasn't Summit pretty big? He seemed like a pretty tall guy, right? He was pretty big, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Am I mistaken for someone else?
Fudge is really big. There's Those are some of the larger players that I know about.
It's actually funny because I guess a lot of people, because they just know the nerds, they're all going to think that like all Koreans are like that. Like, guys, the guy you need to look up is just go this Overwatch player that was Korean called Se Byulbi. This guy was fucking jacked. He looked great. He looked fantastic. He actually had like a fucking really sick physique, and he was really good at the game. Oh, by the way, if it really is a wrestling one though, Monty, I actually will give a sleeper chance to Beryl, because here's the thing. Yeah, Beryl doesn't look in great shape, but I bet he's like Charles Barkley. He's got that low center of gravity. He's got that girth, you know, be bodying, he'd bumping you a bit. I think, yeah, he'd be good on the low post. That's what I'm going to say. There you go, Beryl. Shout out.
All right, I'll do one more because I don't think either of us have seen this, so it's a quick no. Have either of you seen the TV series Black Sails? That's the pirate show. I have not seen it.
No. I would have thought it'd be up your alley by the sounds of it, though.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
People make it sound like it's like a Pirate Sons of Anarchy type show, right?
Yeah,
Like
I've heard it's interesting. It says, given the premise of weaving a prequel to the classic novel Treasure Island with historical figures from the Pirates Republic of Nassau and a cast of well-written, morally gray characters, it seems like Black Sails would be right up your alley. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of it. I have not watched it. I will ask you one final question as a tennis question. Nadal won Grand Slams outside of clay, including 2 on Federer's home turf Wimbledon. Federer, on the other hand, only won 1 French Open. How do people always discount Nadal in the GOATS discussion or even exclude him from it? Does 1 title from Federer really equal 2 from the others because he does a one-handed backhand? I don't know what any of that means.
It's just a really shit fan question where they've just set up only the context they like, intentionally omitted every other piece of context. And at the end, after you're essentially accepting 15 premises in a row you wouldn't agree with, at the end, you can only conclude what they concluded. If you're not, you're a moron. Like, for example, you'll notice immediately he's baked into his assumption that to be the GOAT, you must actually directly head-to-head beat the other guy more often. That's immediately baked in there. Like, I don't even know what that is, because that would be the GOAT of that matchup. Surely the GOAT is against all of the field in human history. Like, the GOAT is the best player ever. So it actually doesn't matter if you lose to one player. Then when he says that whole thing about clay, well, here's an obvious angle for you, which is this. They actually slowed down a lot of other courts and made them actually slower so that in general, people who are like clay court grinders like Nadal automatically have a better chance on hard court, for example, even though he's using Wimbledon as the amp there. Also, I wouldn't ever bring up Wimbledon if you're talking about Nadal, mate. Wimbledon, he had a bit in the middle where he was good, and he's had some of his worst ever performances at Wimbledon. Like, here's the joke. I'll go the other way, dickhead. If you think that because Federer didn't win more French Opens, he's a bomb, well, how about how many times Nadal's got out in the first 3 rounds of Wimbledon, you utter cretin? By that logic, your GOAT can't even beat, like, people who are ranked, like, 128 in the world or something. You morons. How does that make sense? Like, by your logic, Federer must have lost all those, but he didn't, of course. He's barely ever had that happen to him, except when he was mega old. Nadal had it happen in his prime, guys. You can go, like, 2014, 2015. You'll see some mad dodgy runs. So the other angle is this. Notice he only made it one thing. What he essentially said was, Nadal's really good on clay, so if I only look at clay, isn't he the greatest? Isn't everyone else who's using all other factors biased? It's like, none of your biased. That's why you omitted every other factor. Like, I'll throw one out for you right now. Do you know that in tennis, if you're one of the top 8 players every year, you get invited to a tournament called the World Tour Finals, which is the last tournament of the year, and it's sort of like a mini Grand Slam. It's not quite as big as a Grand Slam, there's not many players, but it's just the best players. Now, here's a fun one for you. If Nadal is the GOAT, why has he never won this tournament ever in his whole career? Why have Federer and Djokovic in Nadal's playing career won it something like 7 times each in his career? And you want him to be the GOAT, right? Yeah, brilliant. Well, and by the way, here's one last one I'll chuck in there. Obviously, everyone used to love that angle of like, well, Nadal's won the gold medal in the Olympics, but the others haven't. Andy Murray's won the gold medal twice. So by your logic, Andy Murray's the GOAT over Nadal. We could do this all day long. Fuck off. Anyway, slightly triggered on that one. Slightly. It's all right. It's all good. I got into something there. It's all good.
That'll be it. See you guys later this week for the 4 Horsemen, and see you guys for SI next week. Till then.